The earliest events in the FNAF timeline predate the franchise's release by decades, with the origins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza tracing back to the 1970s, a revelation that transforms what many assume is a simple horror game series into something far more elaborate, a sprawling mythology that spans generations and blurs the line between entertainment and tragedy. What began as a small indie horror game in 2014 has evolved into one of gaming's most complex and debated narratives, a labyrinth of hidden lore, cryptic clues, and interconnected mysteries that have captivated millions and spawned countless theories, each attempting to piece together a story deliberately fragmented across games, books, minigames, and Easter eggs. This is not a tale told in straightforward chapters, but rather a puzzle box designed to confound, where every answer breeds three new questions, where timelines loop back on themselves, where the dead refuse to stay buried, and where the seemingly innocent facade of a children's pizza restaurant conceals decades of horror, obsession, and supernatural vengeance. The FNAF Iceberg is not merely a collection of trivia or hidden secrets, but a structured descent into the very architecture of the franchise's storytelling. A journey that begins with the surface level facts known to casual players and plunges deeper and deeper into obscure details, cut content, developer commentary, and theories so elaborate they require flowcharts to comprehend. At the top of this iceberg, you find the obvious, the animatronics that hunt you through the night, the jump scares, the basic premise of surviving until 6 a.m. But as you descend, the water grows darker and colder, revealing layers most players never see. The true identity of the purple guy, the significance of the bite of 87 versus the bite of 83, the role of the mysterious Golden Freddy, the heartbreaking fate of the missing children, the scientific horrors of Remnant and Agony, the corporate conspiracy surrounding Fazbear Entertainment, the interdimensional implications of the novels, the philosophical questions about consciousness and possession, and the meta-narrative about a franchise that has become a living, evolving entity in constant dialogue with its community. To understand any of it, we have to go back to the very beginning, not to the release of Five Nights at Freddy's in 2014, but to the fictional 1970s, to a time when two friends with a dream opened a small family diner featuring animatronic entertainment, unaware they were setting in motion a chain of events that would echo through decades, claiming lives, shattering families, and birthing something that defies both death and explanation. The iceberg structure itself serves as the perfect metaphor for how FNAF delivers its narrative, because Scott Cawthon, the creator, made a deliberate choice from the very first game to hide his story rather than tell it, to reward those willing to dig through newspaper clippings on walls, to slow down garbled phone calls, to brighten hidden images in the darkness, to data mine game files, to decode binary and hexadecimal, to connect dots across multiple games released over years. This approach created something unprecedented in gaming, a community-driven archaeological dig where thousands of players collaborate, debate, and theorize, where YouTubers build careers analyzing every frame, where the line between canon and fanon becomes genuinely difficult to discern, and where the creator himself watches, occasionally confirms or denies theories, and adjusts future installments based on what the community discovers or misses. The iceberg we are about to explore is divided into layers, each representing a deeper level of obscurity and complexity, and as we descend, you will notice a shift not just in the obscurity of the facts, but in their very nature, moving from explicit game events to implications, from implications to theories, from theories to metatextual analysis, and finally to the truly bizarre, the cut content and abandoned storylines that haunt the franchise like ghosts of what might have been. The surface layer, the tip of the iceberg visible to anyone who has played the games or watched a playthrough, includes the basic premise. You are a night guard at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Animatronic characters roam the building at night. They will kill you if they find you, and you must survive using limited resources, primarily doors and cameras, until morning. This layer also includes the most famous moments, the jump scares that launched 1,000 reaction videos, the iconic characters like Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, the creepy atmosphere of abandoned restaurants and flickering lights, and the general understanding that something bad happened here, that children went missing, that the animatronics are not merely malfunctioning, but are driven by something darker. Just below the surface, we encounter the first layer of actual lore, the pieces of story that attentive players discover through gameplay. The newspaper clippings in FNAF 1 that mention the missing children incident, the phone guy's messages that hint at the bite of 87, the understanding that the animatronics are possessed by the souls of murdered children, the existence of a killer who lured victims to their death, and the realization that Fazbear Entertainment has been covering up these incidents for years, prioritizing profit and reputation over justice and safety. This layer introduces players to the idea that FNAF is not just a horror game, but a mystery, that there is a coherent story to be uncovered if you are willing to look for it. And this is where many players make the choice either to enjoy the games at face value or to begin their descent into the depths. The next layer down reveals the structural complexity of the timeline, the realization that the games are not presented in chronological order, that FNAF 2, despite being the second game released, is actually a prequel set in 1987, that FNAF 3 jumps forward to 2023, that Sister Location introduces a parallel storyline involving a different location and a different set of animatronics, and that FNAF 4 is either a prequel showing the bite of 83 or a nightmare, or both, depending on which rooms you are examining. This layer is where casual fans often stop and dedicated fans are born, because understanding the timeline requires not just playing the games, but researching them, watching theories, comparing notes with other fans, and accepting that some questions have multiple possible answers. Here we also encounter the major characters beyond the animatronics: William Afton, the purple guy, the child murderer whose actions set everything in motion, a man driven by obsession with life and death and the secrets of Remnant. Henry Emily, William's business partner and the father of one of the victims, a man consumed by guilt and the need to set things right. Michael Afton, William's son, who becomes the protagonist of multiple games, a man literally rotting away as he searches for our journey through the complete Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, begins in the early 1970s, a decade before the animatronic horror stories that would eventually define the franchise took their darkest turns. This era marks the birth of what would become one of the most infamous establishments in gaming history, Fredbear's Family Diner. To understand the tragedies that follow, you need to understand where it all started, in a time when the vision was still innocent, when two ambitious entrepreneurs saw nothing but opportunity in bringing joy to children through cutting-edge entertainment technology. The diner itself opened its doors sometime around 1972 or 1973, though the exact year remains somewhat ambiguous in the official timeline. What we do know is that this single location represented the very first foothold of what would eventually expand into the sprawling Fazbear Entertainment empire. Initially, the ownership of this establishment was attributed simply to an unnamed entrepreneur, a shadowy figure in the early lore whose identity seemed deliberately obscured. As the franchise's narrative deepened and expanded across multiple games, books, and supplementary materials, this mysterious founder was revealed to be not one person, but two: William Afton and Henry Emily, co-founders whose partnership would shape everything that followed. These two men came from different backgrounds, but shared a common vision. Henry Emily was the creative genius, the engineer with an almost supernatural talent for robotics and animatronic design. His passion lay in creating characters that could genuinely interact with children, that could blur the line between machine and performer in ways that had never been achieved before. William Afton, on the other hand, brought business acumen and an entrepreneurial drive that complemented Henry's technical brilliance. Where Henry dreamed, William strategized. Where Henry built, William marketed. On the surface, they seemed like the perfect partnership, two halves of a whole that could revolutionize family entertainment. The centerpiece of Fredbear's Family Diner was its animatronic cast, though at this early stage the roster was deliberately small and focused. The star of the show was Fredbear himself, a golden bear character who served as the mascot and primary attraction. Fredbear was designed to be friendly, approachable, and larger than life, a character that children could immediately connect with. His design featured a rotund body, a top hat and bow tie that gave him a vaudeville performer aesthetic, and a wide, welcoming smile that was meant to put families at ease. Alongside Fredbear stood Spring Bonnie, a yellow rabbit character who served as the secondary performer and Fredbear's companion in the various shows and routines that entertained guests throughout the day. Spring Bonnie's design was lankier, more energetic in appearance, meant to contrast with Fredbear's sturdy paternal presence. What set these animatronics apart from anything else available in the entertainment industry at the time was the technology that powered them. This is where Henry's genius truly shone through and where the seeds of future tragedy were first planted. The Springlock suits, as they came to be known, represented a revolutionary approach to animatronic entertainment. Unlike traditional animatronics that were bolted to stages or confined to predetermined movement paths, the Springlock suits were hybrid designs that could function in two distinct modes. In their animatronic mode, they operated like any other mechanical performer, with internal machinery driving their movements, gestures, and programmed routines. But here was the innovation that Henry and William believed would change everything. The same suits could be converted into wearable costumes. The mechanism was ingenious in concept, if horrifyingly dangerous in practice. The suits contained a series of spring-loaded components, metal pieces held in place by tightly wound springs and locking mechanisms. When an employee needed to wear the suit, they would use a special hand crank to wind back these springs, compressing the animatronic components and creating just enough space inside for a human body to fit. Once inside, the employee could see through the character's eyes, move the arms and legs through their own movements, and essentially become the character in a way that no traditional mascot costume allowed. The suit retained its shape, its detailed exterior, its professional appearance, but now it had the flexibility and responsiveness of a human performer inside. William Afton was particularly enthusiastic about the marketing potential of this technology. He recognized that the Springlock suits offered something competitors could never match: the ability to have the same character perform on stage as an animatronic during scheduled shows, then transform into an interactive mascot who could walk among the guests, pose for photographs, and engage with children on a personal level. This versatility meant that Fredbear and Spring Bonnie could be everywhere at once, or at least create that illusion. The suits were marketed not just as entertainment technology, but as the future of the entire industry, a revolutionary innovation that would set Fredbear's Family Diner apart from every other family restaurant and entertainment venue in the country. The diner itself quickly gained traction in its local community. The exact location has never been definitively confirmed in the canon, though various clues suggest somewhere in Utah, which would later become the consistent setting for much of the franchise's events. Families were drawn to the unique experience that Fredbear's offered. The food was standard diner fare, nothing particularly remarkable, but that was never the point. Parents came for the entertainment, for the chance to see their children's faces light up when Fredbear walked up to their table or when Spring Bonnie invited them to join a birthday celebration on stage. The animatronic shows featured simple songs and skits, wholesome content designed for young audiences, and the atmosphere was carefully cultivated to feel safe, clean, and welcoming. William and Henry were hands-on in these early days, personally overseeing operations and continually refining their designs. Henry would spend hours in the back workshop, adjusting the spring lock mechanisms, fine tuning the animatronic programming, and sketching ideas for future characters and attractions. William handled more of the front of house operations, greeting customers, managing staff, and building relationships with the community that would ensure repeat business and positive word of mouth. From the outside, everything appeared to be progressing exactly as planned. The diner was profitable, the technology was impressive, and the brand was beginning to establish itself. But the spring-lock suits, for all their innovation, carried an inherent flaw that would eventually prove catastrophic. The mechanism that allowed them to function in both modes relied on those tightly wound springs, maintaining their tension and position. The locks that held the springs in place needed to remain secure at all times when someone was inside the suit. Any failure, any loosening of those locks would cause the springs to release with tremendous force, and the metal animatronic components would snap back into their original positions. If someone happened to be occupying that space when the spring locks failed, the results would be devastating. The first known incident occurred within the first few years of operation, though the exact circumstances remain somewhat unclear in the documented lore. What we do know is that an employee was wearing one of the spring-lock suits, likely Spring Bonnie based on later references, when something went wrong. The most commonly accepted theory is that moisture triggered the failure. Sweat, humidity, even breath condensation inside the suit could cause the springs to loosen or the locks to slip. Other possibilities include physical impact, wear and tear on the mechanisms, or simple user error in not properly securing the locks before entering the suit. Regardless of the specific cause, the outcome was horrific. The springs released, the metal components snapped inward, and the employee inside was severely injured by the crushing, piercing force of the animatronic parts returning to their default positions. The injury was serious enough to raise immediate alarm among the staff and management. This was not a minor accident that could be quietly addressed with a bandage and a warning. The employee required medical attention, and while the full extent of their injuries is not detailed in the canon, the incident was severe enough to prompt internal discussions about the safety of continuing to use the springlock suits at all. Henry Emily, ever the conscientious engineer, was deeply troubled by the failure. He began conducting investigations into what had gone wrong, examining the suit in question, reviewing the maintenance logs, and considering whether the entire springlock concept needed to be redesigned or abandoned altogether. This incident led to what the internal company documents would later refer to as a temporary suspension of the springlock suits. For a period of time, the decision was made to cease using the suits in wearable mode, restricting Fredbear and Spring Bonnie to their animatronic functions only. This meant no more walk-around characters, no more personal interactions with guests in the dining area, a significant reduction in the unique selling point that had made the diner so special. It was a conservative approach, prioritizing safety over spectacle, and it reflected Henry's growing reservations about whether the technology was ready for widespread use. William Afton, however, saw things differently. His perspective was shaped by business considerations and a certain callousness toward risk that would become more apparent as the timeline progressed. To William, the springlock suits represented too significant an investment and too powerful a marketing tool to abandon over a single incident. He argued that the failure was an isolated event, that proper training and maintenance protocols could prevent future accidents, and that suspending the suits indefinitely would damage the diner's reputation and competitive advantage. His insistence on continuing to use the springlock technology, despite the documented dangers, created the first real friction between the two partners, a philosophical divide that hinted at deeper differences in their characters and values. The diner's stage show quickly became the centerpiece of the entire operation, with Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performing carefully choreographed routines for the children who packed the dining room every weekend. The animatronics moved through a repertoire of simple songs, mostly public domain melodies that Henry Emily had selected for their cheerful, family friendly appeal. The programming relied on a series of pneumatic cylinders and basic servo motors controlled by magnetic tape reels, technology that was state of the art for the time, but limited in its capabilities. Each performance followed the same rigid sequence, with Fredbear strumming his plastic guitar while Spring Bonnie played a banjo, both characters swaying side to side in time with the pre recorded music that played through speakers hidden behind the stage curtains. The children didn't seem to mind the repetitive nature of the shows. To them, these characters were magical, larger than life figures that existed solely to make their birthdays and special occasions memorable. The early versions of the animatronic programming presented constant challenges for Henry Emily, who spent countless late nights in the diner's back room adjusting timing mechanisms and replacing worn components. The magnetic tape system was prone to stretching and degradation, which caused the animatronics to drift out of sync with the audio tracks. Henry developed a maintenance schedule that required the tapes to be replaced every 6 weeks and the pneumatic systems to be inspected weekly for leaks and pressure loss. William Afton occasionally assisted with these technical tasks, though his contributions were sporadic and often came with suggestions for modifications that Henry considered unnecessarily complex. Where Henry saw a functioning system that simply needed refinement, William saw limitations that demanded revolutionary solutions. This fundamental difference in their approaches to engineering would become more pronounced as the months wore on. The diner's pivot toward hosting birthday parties and private events proved to be a masterstroke in business strategy. Henry Emily recognized that families were willing to pay premium prices for exclusive access to the animatronic characters and the party rooms he had constructed in addition to the original building. Each party package included a reserved table decorated with Fredbear themed paper goods, a personal appearance by an employee in one of the Springlock suits, and a special birthday song performed by the stage animatronics with the birthday child's name incorporated into the lyrics. This personalization required Henry to develop a system of interchangeable tape segments that could be swapped in and out depending on the party schedule, a tedious process, but one that delighted parents and children alike. The private events became so popular that the diner was often booked solid on weekends 3 months in advance, generating a steady revenue stream that far exceeded what the regular dining operations brought in. William Afton's experimentation with animatronic technology took place far from the public eye in a workshop he had set up in the basement of his own home. While Henry focused on maintaining and incrementally improving the existing systems, William pursued more ambitious goals. He became fascinated with the idea of creating animatronics that could move with greater fluidity and respond to their environment in real time rather than simply following pre programmed routines. His workshop filled with prototype components, circuit boards scavenged from various electronics, and notebooks filled with schematics that grew increasingly elaborate and difficult to decipher. William's wife occasionally expressed concern about the amount of time he spent in the basement, the late hours, and the obsessive focus that seemed to consume him whenever he descended those stairs. He would reassure her that this work was essential for the future of the business, that the innovations he was developing would revolutionize the entire entertainment industry. What he didn't share with her, or with Henry, was the darker direction his experiments were beginning to take. William had become interested in the idea of creating animatronics with more sophisticated internal mechanisms, systems that could potentially house something beyond mere machinery. Henry Emily, by contrast, remained laser focused on maintaining the diner's family friendly image and ensuring customer satisfaction. He personally greeted families as they arrived, learned the names of regular customers, and made a point of asking children about their favorite characters. This personal touch created a sense of community around Fredbear's family diner, transforming it from a simple restaurant into a beloved local institution. Henry trained his small staff to embody the same warmth and attentiveness, conducting regular meetings where he emphasized the importance of creating magical experiences for every child who walked through the door. He implemented a comment card system and actually read every single card, using the feedback to make continuous improvements to everything from the menu offerings to the timing of the stage shows. When parents praised the cleanliness of the restaurant or the friendliness of the staff, Henry felt a deep sense of pride. This was what he had envisioned when he and William first sketched out their plans for the diner, a place where families could create happy memories together. The financial success of Fredbear's Family Diner exceeded even Henry's optimistic projections, and within 2 years of opening, he and William began discussing plans for expansion. They talked about opening additional locations in neighboring towns, creating a regional chain of Fredbear themed restaurants that could eventually spread across the entire state. Henry approached these expansion plans methodically, researching potential locations, analyzing demographic data, and developing detailed financial projections. William engaged with the expansion discussions enthusiastically, but seemed more interested in the opportunity to implement new animatronic designs than in the business logistics. He proposed that any new locations should feature entirely new characters, a larger cast that could perform more elaborate shows. Henry worried about the costs and complexity of such an approach, preferring to replicate the proven success of the original diner's simple two-character setup. These disagreements remained cordial, but revealed the growing divergence in their visions for the company's future. The spring-lock suits, which had been quietly removed from service after the initial incident that injured an employee during the diner's first year, were eventually reintroduced with what William Afton described as minor but crucial modifications. He had redesigned the locking mechanism to include additional safety features, a secondary crank that needed to be engaged before the suit could fully compress, and warning indicators that would theoretically alert the wearer if moisture levels became dangerous. Henry Emily remained deeply uncomfortable with the decision to bring the spring-lock suits back into use, but William argued persuasively that the suits were essential for the private party appearances that had become such a significant revenue source. The fixed animatronics on stage were impressive, but children wanted to interact with the characters up close, to hug them and hold their hands. Only the wearable suits could provide that experience. Henry reluctantly agreed to the reintroduction, but insisted on implementing strict safety protocols. Employees who wore the suits had to complete a training session, sign liability waivers, and were instructed never to wear the suits in humid conditions or to make any sudden movements that might trigger the spring locks. Despite these precautions, the employees who wore the suits often reported feeling uneasy, describing the experience as claustrophobic and unsettling, the constant awareness that they were surrounded by dozens of tightly wound springs that could release at any moment. William Afton's growing obsession with animatronic technology began to create noticeable strain in his partnership with Henry Emily. William started missing scheduled meetings, claiming he was working on important technical developments that couldn't be interrupted. When he did attend business discussions, he seemed distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. Henry would present financial reports or customer feedback data, and William would nod absently before steering the conversation back to his latest ideas for animatronic improvements. The easy camaraderie that had characterized their early partnership gave way to a more transactional relationship, with Henry increasingly handling the day-to-day operations while William retreated into his private research. Henry's wife noticed the change and suggested that perhaps William was dealing with personal problems at home, that Henry should reach out and make sure his partner was doing all right. Henry made several attempts to have more personal conversations with William, but these efforts were always deflected. William would insist everything was fine, that he was simply excited about the technological possibilities ahead of them, and then he would launch into another monologue about servo motor efficiency or pneumatic response times. The diner's financial success generated substantial profits that William insisted should be reinvested in animatronic research and development. Henry agreed in principle, but worried about the amounts William wanted to spend and the lack of clear business justification for some of the proposed projects. William argued that they needed to stay ahead of potential competitors, that other entrepreneurs would inevitably try to copy their concept, and that only continuous innovation would allow them to maintain their market position. He proposed establishing a dedicated research and development facility, separate from the diner itself, where he could work on next generation animatronic systems without the constraints of the restaurant environment. Henry questioned whether such an investment made sense before they had even opened a second location, but William's passion for the idea was undeniable. They reached a compromise where William would receive a dedicated budget for R&D, but the funds would be released in stages contingent on demonstrated progress toward commercially viable improvements. This arrangement satisfied neither of them completely, but allowed the partnership to continue functioning. The first rumors of strange occurrences at the diner began circulating among employees sometime during the second year of operations. Night shift workers, the small crew responsible for closing the restaurant and performing basic cleaning tasks, reported hearing sounds coming from the stage area after the animatronics had been powered down for the night. They described mechanical whirring noises, the sound of servos engaging, and occasionally what sounded like the animatronics' pre-recorded voice lines playing at low volume. When these reports reached Henry Emily, he investigated personally, staying late one evening to observe the darkened restaurant. He heard nothing unusual and attributed the reports to the building settling, the sounds of the refrigeration systems, and the overactive imaginations of employees working alone in a dimly lit space filled with large mechanical figures. He addressed the staff at the next meeting, explaining the various mundane sources of nighttime sounds and gently suggesting that they were letting the creepy appearance of the powered down animatronics get to them. Most employees accepted this explanation, though a few remained convinced they had experienced something genuinely strange. These rumors never reached the customers, and Henry made sure they stayed contained within the staff, but they represented the first whispers of the unsettling reputation that would eventually plague the entire Fazbear franchise. Fredbear's Family Diner, through its combination of innovative animatronic entertainment, shrewd business practices, and genuine commitment to customer experience, established the foundation upon which the entire Fazbear empire would eventually be built. The diner proved that families would enthusiastically embrace restaurants that offered more than just food, that the combination of dining and entertainment could create a uniquely profitable business model. Every decision made during these formative years, from the design of the animatronic characters to the focus on birthday parties, from the development of the spring-lock technology to the expansion ambitions, would echo through the decades that followed. The partnership between Henry Emily and William Afton, despite its growing tensions, had created something genuinely new in the landscape of family entertainment. Neither man could have predicted the dark legacy that would ultimately emerge from their creation, the tragedies and horrors that would become inseparable from the Fazbear name. But in these early years, Fredbear's Family Diner represented pure possibility, a successful business built on the simple goal of making children smile. By 1983, the seeds planted by William Afton and Henry Emily's initial venture were about to bloom into something far larger and more complex than either man could have anticipated. The success of their original partnership had proven that animatronic entertainment could capture the public imagination in ways traditional restaurant entertainment simply could not match. What began as a modest experiment in combining dining with robotic performances was now poised to expand into a full-fledged empire, though the darkness lurking beneath its cheerful exterior would soon begin to show its first cracks. Fredbear's Family Diner officially opened its doors in this year, marking the true beginning of what would become a legendary and tragic franchise. The diner itself was a relatively small establishment, designed with families in mind. The interior featured bright yellows and purples, colors chosen specifically to appeal to children, while remaining pleasant for parents who would be spending money there. Booth seating lined the walls, and a small stage occupied the central area where the star attractions would perform. The menu was simple, pizza and soft drinks primarily, though the food was never really the point. People came for the animatronics. The two main characters at Fredbear's Family Diner were Fredbear himself and Spring Bonnie. Fredbear was a golden bear character, rotund and friendly in appearance, wearing a black bow tie and top hat that gave him a vaguely vaudevillian charm. His design was meant to be approachable, non-threatening, the kind of character a child would want to hug rather than fear. Spring Bonnie, his companion, was a golden rabbit with a similarly cheerful design, though slightly more slender in build. The rabbit wore a purple bow tie, creating a visual complement to Fredbear's black accessories. Together, these two characters would perform simple songs and skits, their movements jerky by modern standards, but revolutionary for the early 1980s. What made these animatronics particularly special and particularly dangerous was their hybrid nature. They were spring-lock suits, a term that refers to a specific type of animatronic technology that William Afton had helped pioneer. The spring-lock mechanism allowed these suits to function in two distinct modes. In animatronic mode, the internal machinery, the gears, pistons, and mechanical components that created movement would be locked in place throughout the suit, allowing it to perform autonomously on stage. However, by winding back these spring locks using a special hand crank, the mechanical parts could be compressed against the suit's interior walls, creating a hollow cavity inside. This allowed a human performer to actually wear the suit, turning it into a costume for special events, birthday parties, or interactive performances where a more responsive, human-controlled character was desired. The spring lock system was ingenious in theory, but horrifically dangerous in practice. The locks that held the mechanical components in place were under constant tension, like a compressed spring waiting to release. Moisture, sudden movements, or even breathing too heavily could trigger a spring lock failure, causing the mechanisms to violently snap back into their original positions. Since a person would be occupying the space where those mechanisms wanted to be, the result would be catastrophic. Metal components, gears with teeth, support beams, and animatronic endoskeleton parts would forcibly reinsert themselves into the suit's cavity, impaling and crushing whoever was inside. The company would eventually implement a strict safety protocols around spring-lock suits, but in these early days, the danger was not yet fully understood or respected. William Afton and Henry Emily stood as equal partners in Fredbear's Family Diner, at least on paper. Henry was the creative force, the engineer with a genuine passion for bringing joy to children through his mechanical creations. He saw the animatronics as a form of art, a way to create magic in the real world. His technical skill was unmatched, and he approached each design challenge with the enthusiasm of someone who truly loved his work. Henry had a family, a daughter who would become tragically important to the story, and his motivations seemed pure. He wanted to build something that would make children smile, that would create happy memories for families. William Afton, on the other hand, was a more enigmatic figure. Outwardly, he was charming and business savvy, the kind of partner who could handle the financial and promotional aspects of the venture, while Henry focused on engineering. He was a family man as well, with at least 3 children, and he seemed to share Henry's enthusiasm for the business. But beneath this facade, something darker was brewing. William had his own interest in the animatronic technology, an interest that extended beyond entertainment and profit. He began conducting private experiments, exploring the capabilities of the machines, in ways that Henry likely never knew about or approved of. The exact nature of these early experiments remains somewhat unclear, but they hint at William's growing obsession with the animatronics and what they might be capable of beyond simple performance. The diner quickly became a beloved local establishment. Parents appreciated the affordable entertainment, and children were absolutely captivated by Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. Birthday parties became a staple of the business, with families booking the venue weeks in advance. The animatronics would perform special birthday songs, and sometimes a staff member would wear one of the Springlock suits to interact more personally with the birthday child, posing for photos and playing simple games. The atmosphere was one of innocent joy, at least on the surface. As Fredbear's Family Diner proved its concept and profitability, the partners began planning an expansion. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was established as a successor location, a larger venue that would build upon everything they had learned from the diner. This new restaurant would be more ambitious in scope, featuring a bigger dining area, a larger stage, and most importantly, a whole cast of new animatronic characters. While Fredbear's had relied on just two characters, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza would introduce an entire band. The original animatronics at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza became icons of the franchise. Freddy Fazbear himself was the lead character, a brown bear wearing a black bow tie and top hat, clearly inspired by Fredbear, but distinct in his coloring and slightly more refined design. He held a microphone and served as the frontman of the animatronic band. Bonnie was a blue rabbit with a red bow tie, playing guitar. Unlike Spring Bonnie's golden coloring, this Bonnie was a vibrant purple blue, giving him a different character entirely. Chica was a yellow chicken with a bib reading Let's Eat, holding a cupcake and serving as the backup vocalist. Finally, there was Foxy, a red fox pirate with an eye patch and hook hand, designed with a more dynamic, aggressive appearance that set him apart from the others. Foxy had his own separate area called Pirate Cove, where he would perform from behind a curtain. These animatronics represented a technological leap forward from Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. They were more sophisticated in their movements, their facial expressions more varied, their performances more elaborate. They were also, crucially, not Springlock suits. These were dedicated animatronics, designed purely for performance, without the dangerous hybrid functionality. This made them safer in some ways, though as events would prove, safety was always relative when it came to these machines. Henry Emily created another animatronic during this period, one that would prove absolutely crucial to the unfolding tragedy. The puppet, also sometimes called the marionette, was a slender, humanoid animatronic with a white face painted with rosy cheeks and red lips, giving it an unsettling, mask-like appearance. Black tears were painted running down from its eyes, creating an expression that was simultaneously sad and eerie. The puppet was housed in a large music box, and its primary function appeared to be as a prize-dispensing character, though some evidence suggests Henry may have designed it with security purposes in mind, perhaps as a way to watch over children in the restaurant. The creation of the puppet may have been more than just a business decision for Henry. Some interpretations of the lore suggest it was an emotional project, possibly connected to his daughter, though the exact nature of this connection would only become clear through later tragic events. The puppet had a different quality than the other animatronics, something more watchful, more aware, as if Henry had poured something extra into its design. During this period of expansion and apparent success, darkness was growing within William Afton's own family. His youngest son, a boy who would become known in the community as the crying child due to his constant tears and fearful demeanor, had developed a severe phobia of the animatronics. While other children delighted in Fredbear and the others, this boy was absolutely terrified. He would cry and panic whenever near them, seeing something in their mechanical movements and fixed expressions that other children seemed blind to. Whether this fear stemmed from something he had witnessed, something his father had exposed him to, or simply a child's intuition sensing danger, the crying child's terror was very real. His fear was made worse by his older brother, Michael Afton, who would become a central figure in the later timeline. Michael was a teenager, and like many teenagers, he could be cruel in his teasing. He wore a foxy mask, using it to scare his younger brother, jumping out from around corners or looming over the boy's bed at night. Michael had a group of friends who similarly wore masks of the adult. Their bullying went beyond simple sibling rivalry. They seemed to take genuine pleasure in terrorizing the boy, exploiting his very real phobia for their own amusement. The crying child's birthday was approaching, and despite his fear, or perhaps in an attempt to help him overcome it, a party was planned at Fredbear's family diner. The boy clearly did not want this party, his anxiety building as the day approached. He was seen crying throughout the restaurant, even before the main event, watching the animatronics with wide, terrified eyes, flinching at every mechanical movement. Family and friends attended, gathering in the diner's cheerful interior, seemingly oblivious to or dismissive of the birthday boy's distress. Michael and his friends saw an opportunity in what they likely thought was just another prank, just another way to tease the crying, fearful child. They grabbed the boy. He struggled and screamed, but they lifted him up, carrying him toward the stage where Fredbear was performing. The animatronic's mouth opened. The boys lifted the crying child higher, moving him toward Fredbear's mouth, perhaps intending to just scare him, to make him think they would put his head inside. The child's screams intensified, his terror absolute, his worst nightmare literally closing its jaws before his eyes. The tragedy unfolds on what should have been a day of celebration. The crying child, already terrified beyond measure, is lifted by his brother and friends toward Fredbear's open mouth. What begins as cruel teasing becomes something far worse. The spring-lock-powered animatronic's jaw, designed to move with mechanical precision during performances, clamps down on the child's head with devastating force. The sound of metal meeting bone echoes through the diner as screams fill the air. Blood pools on the checkered floor. Parents rush to pull the child free, while employees frantically attempt to release the jaw mechanism. The crying child's skull has been catastrophically damaged, the pressure of Fredbear's bite causing injuries that 1983 medical technology will struggle to address. This moment, forever known as the bite of '83, marks a turning point not just for the Afton family, but for the entire future of Fazbear Entertainment. The crying child is rushed to the hospital, his condition critical. For days, he lingers between life and death, and while his family keeps vigil. His father, William Afton, watches from the bedside, his expression unreadable. His older brother is consumed by guilt, having never intended for his prank to result in such horror. The medical staff work tirelessly, but the damage is too severe. Brain trauma, skull fractures, internal bleeding. The child slips in and out of consciousness, and during his lucid moments, he sees the plush Fredbear that someone has placed beside his bed. In the game's depiction, we witness fragmented conversations, apologies whispered in the darkness, and a promise that the child will be put back together. But medicine cannot undo what has been done. After several agonizing days, the crying child succumbs to his injuries. The death certificate lists the cause as complications from traumatic head injury. William Afton's youngest son is gone, and with him goes whatever remained of William's humanity. The news of a child dying from an animatronic malfunction spreads rapidly through the community. Local television stations cover the story. Newspapers run headlines about the dangers of entertainment robots. Parents who once saw Fredbear's Family Diner as a magical place for birthday celebrations now view it as a death trap. The public outrage is immediate and severe. Protest groups form outside the diner's entrance. Lawyers begin circling, preparing lawsuits. The health department launches investigations into the safety protocols, or lack thereof, at the establishment. Henry Emily, as co owner and the primary engineer behind the animatronics, faces intense scrutiny. How could a family friendly robot be capable of such violence? Questions arise about the spring lock mechanisms, about whether proper safety measures were in place, about whether children should ever have been allowed so close to the animatronics. The reputation that Henry and William spent years building crumbles in a matter of weeks. Attendance plummets. The once crowded dining room sits empty. Birthday party reservations are canceled en masse. The financial losses mount daily, but more than that, the trust is broken. Fredbear's Family Diner, which represented innovation and joy, now represents negligence and death. Faced with mounting legal pressure, financial ruin, and the impossibility of recovering public trust, the decision is made to close Fredbear's Family Diner permanently. The doors lock for the final time. The colorful banners are taken down. The tables and chairs are stacked. The stage where Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performed their routines falls silent. For Henry Emily, this closure represents the death of a dream. He had envisioned a place where children could experience wonder, where families could make memories, where his technical genius could bring happiness to the world. Instead, his creation killed a child. The guilt weighs heavily on him, though he bears no direct responsibility for the prank that led to the bite. For William Afton, the closure means something different. His business is destroyed, yes, but more importantly, his son is dead. And unlike Henry, William's response to grief will not be remorse or reflection. William Afton changes after his son's death. Those who knew him before notice the shift. He becomes withdrawn, obsessive. Where he once showed at least a veneer of charm and sociability, now there is only cold calculation. He retreats into his workshop, spending hours with his schematics and machinery. Some believe he is searching for answers, trying to understand what went wrong with the spring lock mechanism. Others sense something darker at work. William begins to fixate on concepts of life and death, on the boundary between the two states. He has always been fascinated by the animatronics, by the illusion of life they present. But now that fascination curdles into something more sinister. If his son is dead, if that young life has been extinguished, then what happens to what made him alive? Where does consciousness go? Can it be preserved, captured, transferred? These questions consume William. His mental state deteriorates, though he hides it well from those around him. He becomes increasingly unhinged, driven by a need that he cannot fully articulate, even to himself. Is it revenge he seeks? Revenge against fate, against death itself? Or is it knowledge, the understanding of mortality, that might allow him to undo what has been done? Perhaps it is both. Perhaps it is neither. What matters is that William Afton, already morally compromised, now abandons whatever ethical boundaries previously constrained him. Meanwhile, certain assets from Fredbear's Family Diner are transferred to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the establishment that Henry and William had opened as an expansion of their original concept. Among these assets is the puppet animatronic, sometimes called the marionette. This tall, slender figure, with its white face and red cheeks, had served as a prize dispensing attraction at Fredbear's. Its design differs markedly from the other animatronics. Where Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy are bulky and mechanical, the puppet is lithe and unsettling. Its movements are smooth rather than jerky. Its face, with those distinctive tear like markings running down from its eyes, suggests sadness rather than joy. The puppet is placed in a large gift box in the prize corner of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, programmed to emerge when a music box winds down. But the puppet is more than just an animatronic. It is, as we have established, possessed by the spirit of Henry Emily's daughter, Charlotte, murdered by William Afton outside the original diner. At Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the puppet becomes a key figure in the unfolding supernatural events. It watches, it remembers, and it will soon play a crucial role in the fate of other murdered children. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza continues operating despite the closure of its sister location. The business model shifts. Where Fredbear's Family Diner was intimate and personal, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is larger, louder, more commercial. The main attractions are Freddy Fazbear himself, the titular brown bear with his top hat and bow tie, along with Bonnie the purple rabbit, Chica the yellow chicken, and Foxy the pirate fox. These animatronics perform on stage, sing songs, and interact with children during the day. The pizza is mediocre, the carpet is stained, and the ventilation is poor, but children still beg their parents to take them. Yet the closure of Fredbear's and the circumstances surrounding it cast a shadow. Rumors begin to circulate. Parents whisper to each other about the animatronics, about whether they are safe, about whether the same thing could happen here. Children share stories on the playground about the robots coming to life, about them moving on their own, about strange noises heard from the back rooms. Employees notice odd occurrences. Animatronics seem to be in different positions than where they were left. The puppet's music box sometimes winds down faster than it should. There is a feeling impossible to quantify, but deeply felt, that something is wrong with Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The building does not feel entirely safe. The animatronics do not feel entirely mechanical. But business continues because bills must be paid and shareholders demand returns. It is during this period that William Afton begins wearing the Spring Bonnie suit with increasing frequency. Spring Bonnie, the yellow rabbit character from Fredbear's Family Diner, has also been relocated to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The spring-lock suit that allows a human to wear the animatronic costume sits in a back room, officially decommissioned after the bite of 83 raised questions about spring-lock safety. But William has always had access to restricted areas. He knows the suits intimately, having helped design them. He understands the risks of the spring locks, the danger of moisture or sudden movement causing the spring-loaded components to snap back into animatronic mode while someone is inside. But he also understands the utility of the suit. When William wears Spring Bonnie, he is not himself. He is a character, a friendly mascot, something children trust. The suit provides anonymity. Security cameras capture a yellow rabbit, not William Afton. Witnesses remember the character, not the man inside. Whether William initially dons the suit for legitimate reasons, perhaps helping with parties or promotional events, or whether his intentions are sinister from the start, the result is the same. Spring Bonnie becomes William's disguise, his tool, his second identity. Then comes the first missing children incident, an event that will define the entire Five Nights at Freddy's timeline. 5 children disappear from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Their names, revealed through various games and supplementary materials, are Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy. They are lured away from the main party rooms, away from supervision, away from safety. The exact method varies in the retelling, but the core truth remains consistent. A man in a Spring Bonnie suit, someone the children trust because he looks like one of the friendly characters they love, leads them to a back room. What happens in that room is never explicitly shown in the games, but the outcome is clear. All 5 children are murdered. Their bodies are hidden, stuffed inside the animatronic suits: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy. The fifth child, Cassidy, is placed inside a golden colored Freddy suit, later known as Golden Freddy. The restaurant erupts in panic when the children cannot be found. Parents scream for their kids. Employees search every room. Police are called. Investigations begin. But the bodies are not discovered immediately. The animatronics continue performing, unaware or perhaps all too aware of what they now contain. William Afton is suspected almost immediately by those who know to look. Henry Emily, upon hearing of the disappearances, feels a terrible certainty. The police investigate William, question him, but they lack concrete evidence. No witnesses can definitively identify the man inside the Spring Bonnie suit. The bodies have not been found. William's alibi, whatever he constructs, holds up under scrutiny. He is released. The case remains open, but without bodies, without evidence, without witnesses willing or able to testify, no charges are filed. William Afton walks free, and he will continue to walk free for years to come. The missing children incident becomes local legend, a tragedy that haunts the community. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza remains open, though attendance drops and the atmosphere grows increasingly tense. But something else happens in the aftermath of the murders, something that defies natural law. The puppet, possessed by Charlotte Emily, witnesses the deaths or discovers the bodies. The spirit within the puppet who understands what has occurred. These children, like Charlotte herself, have been murdered by William Afton. Their lives have been stolen, and the puppet, driven by a need to protect, to preserve, to prevent these children from simply disappearing into death, acts. Through means that blend the supernatural with the technological, the puppet enables the spirits of the 5 murdered children to inhabit the animatronics that contain their bodies. Gabriel becomes Freddy, Jeremy becomes Bonnie, Susie becomes Chica, Fritz becomes Foxy, Cassidy becomes Golden Freddy. The children's consciousness, their anger, their confusion, their desire for justice, all of it pours into the metal and circuitry. The animatronics are now truly haunted. They possess awareness beyond their programming. They remember in fragmented ways what was done to them. And they will spend the next decades seeking revenge against the man who killed them, often unable to distinguish between their murderer and any adult who wears a security guard's uniform. The puppet's intervention, born from a desire to help, ensures that these children cannot rest, cannot move on, cannot find peace. They are trapped, bound to the machines, and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza becomes a tomb, masquerading as a family restaurant. Transitioning into the year 1985, we arrive at one of the most pivotal and harrowing events in the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline, the missing children incident. This tragedy not only marks the beginning of the franchise's overarching narrative, but also sets the stage for the dark legacy of Fazbear Entertainment and its co-founder, William Afton. To fully understand the gravity of this event, we must first delve into the motivations and actions of William Afton, a man whose descent into madness would forever alter the fate of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the lives of those connected to it. William Afton, alongside his business partner Henry Emily, co-founded Fazbear Entertainment, a company that would come to dominate the family entertainment industry with its animatronic characters and themed pizzerias. However, Afton's ambitions extended far beyond mere business success. Driven by a fascination with immortality and the concept of remnant, a paranormal substance believed to contain the essence of a soul, Afton began to formulate a sinister plan. Remnant, as later explored in the franchise, is tied to the idea that souls can be bound to physical objects, particularly animatronics, through traumatic events such as death. Afton sought to harness this power, believing it could grant him eternal life. This obsession would ultimately lead him down a path of unspeakable cruelty. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the flagship establishment of Fazbear Entertainment, opened its doors in 1983, quickly becoming a beloved destination for families and children. The restaurant featured a cast of animatronic characters, including Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox. These animatronics were designed to entertain guests during the day and remain stationary on stage at night, a system that seemed harmless on the surface. However, behind the scenes, William Afton was already laying the groundwork for his horrific experiments. Among his creations was the Spring Bonnie animatronic suit, a spring-lock suit that could be worn by a person or function as an autonomous animatronic. This suit, with its cheerful appearance and versatile design, would become Afton's tool of deception and destruction. The Spring Bonnie suit played a central role in the missing children incident. In 1985, Afton, disguised in the suit, lured 5 unsuspecting children into a back room of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The children, Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, were drawn to the promise of a special performance or a hidden surprise, unaware of the danger that awaited them. Once inside the secluded area, Afton revealed his true intentions, brutally murdering each child in cold blood. The exact details of their deaths remain shrouded in mystery, but the aftermath of these killings would have far-reaching consequences. Following the murders, Afton concealed the bodies of the children within the animatronics themselves. Gabriel's body was hidden inside Freddy Fazbear, Jeremy's inside Bonnie the Bunny, Susie's inside Chica the Chicken, Fritz's inside Foxy the Pirate Fox, and Cassidy's inside Golden Freddy, a mysterious and rarely seen animatronic. This act of desecration was not merely a means of disposing of evidence. It was a deliberate attempt to bind the souls of the victims to the animatronics, ensuring their remnant would remain trapped within the machines. Afton's experiments, though horrifying, proved successful in this regard. The souls of the murdered children became intertwined with the animatronics, granting them a form of sentience and an unrelenting desire for vengeance. The missing children incident did not go unnoticed by the public. Reports of the disappearances were filed with the police, sparking an investigation into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. However, despite the efforts of law enforcement, the bodies of the children were never recovered. This failure to uncover the truth only deepened the sense of unease surrounding the restaurant. Rumors began to circulate, suggesting foul play and even implicating the animatronics themselves in the disappearances. Additionally, concerns about unsanitary conditions at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza further tarnished its reputation. Whispers of foul odors and leaking fluids from the animatronics fueled speculation that something sinister was afoot, though few could have guessed the horrifying reality. As the public outcry grew, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza faced a sharp decline in business. Families, once eager to visit the establishment, now avoided it out of fear and mistrust. The restaurant's temporary closure in 1985 marked a turning point for Fazbear Entertainment, signaling the beginning of its troubled history. Yet, amidst the chaos and scrutiny, William Afton managed to evade suspicion. His public persona as a respected businessman and co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment shielded him from the accusations that might have otherwise doomed him. Behind the mask of civility, however, Afton continued his experiments, undeterred by the consequences of his actions. The missing children incident serves as a cornerstone of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore, introducing key elements such as Remnant, the haunted animatronics, and the central conflict between William Afton and his victims. The souls of Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, bound to the animatronics, would go on to play a significant role in the events that followed, seeking justice for the lives stolen from them. Meanwhile, Afton's pursuit of immortality would lead him further down a path of darkness, setting the stage for future tragedies and the enduring legacy of Fazbear Entertainment. This incident also highlights the dual nature of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a place of joy and wonder for children, yet a site of unimaginable horror lurking beneath the surface. The contrast between the cheerful facade of the animatronics and the grim reality of their haunted existence encapsulates the franchise's themes of innocence, corrupted, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. As we continue to explore the timeline, the repercussions of the missing children incident will reverberate through the years, shaping the destiny of all those connected to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the enigmatic William Afton. In the next part of our exploration, we will delve deeper into the immediate aftermath of the missing children incident, examining the fallout for Fazbear Entertainment, the ongoing struggles of the haunted animatronics, and the continued machinations of William Afton. The year 1985 may have marked the beginning of this dark chapter, but the story is far from over. The shadows cast by these events will stretch across decades, influencing the lives of countless individuals and the fate of the franchise itself. As the missing children incident unfolded in 1985, the animatronics at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza began exhibiting increasingly strange and unsettling behavior. Employees reported that the animatronics, which were once friendly and predictable, started moving on their own, often appearing in places they shouldn't be. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, once beloved characters designed to entertain children, now seemed to act with a mind of their own. Their movements were erratic, their expressions unnerving, and their behavior increasingly aggressive. Staff members would find them staring directly at them, as if the animatronics were alive and aware of their surroundings. This marked the beginning of a series of events that would cement Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a place of horror and mystery. The puppet, a unique animatronic housed in a music box, played a pivotal role in guiding the souls of the murdered children. This animatronic was controlled by the spirit of Charlotte Emily, the daughter of Henry Emily, co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment. Charlotte, often referred to as Charlie, had been tragically killed by William Afton outside the restaurant, her death marking the first in a series of atrocities. Her spirit, now bound to the puppet, became a protector and a guide for the other lost souls. The puppet's actions were deliberate and purposeful as it sought to ensure that the children's spirits would not fade away into oblivion. It was the puppet who placed the souls of the murdered children into the animatronics, granting them a form of continued existence. This act of spiritual transference bound the children's souls to the animatronics, giving them a semblance of life and a means to seek justice. Among the animatronics, Golden Freddy, also known as Fredbear, became a particularly vengeful entity. This animatronic was possessed by Cassidy, one of the murdered children, whose spirit was filled with a burning desire for retribution against William Afton. Golden Freddy's presence was often accompanied by eerie phenomena, such as flickering lights, distorted audio, and the appearance of cryptic messages. Unlike the other animatronics, Golden Freddy did not follow the same patterns of behavior. It would appear and disappears at will, often targeting those it deemed guilty or complicit in the tragedy. Cassidy's spirit, trapped within Golden Freddy, became a symbol of the children's collective anger and their relentless pursuit of justice. The missing children incident did not remain confined to the walls of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. News of the tragedy spread quickly, giving rise to urban legends and rumors about haunted animatronics and missing children. Parents whispered warnings to their children, and the restaurant became a place of fear rather than joy. Stories of ghostly sightings, strange noises, and unexplained events fueled the public's imagination, turning Freddy Fazbear's Pizza into a local legend. These rumors persisted for years, contributing to the restaurant's eventual decline and the tarnished reputation of Fazbear Entertainment. William Afton, the man behind the murders, continued his dark experiments with Remnant, a supernatural substance derived from the souls of the deceased. Remnant, as Afton discovered, had the power to animate the inanimate, granting life to machines and prolonging existence beyond death. Afton's experiments were driven by a twisted desire to understand and harness this power, and he saw the animatronics as a source of this supernatural energy. By extracting remnant from the animatronics, Afton sought to achieve immortality, believing that he could cheat death and transcend the limitations of the human body. His actions further deepened the tragedy of the missing children incident, as the souls of the children were exploited for his own gain. The missing children incident became a foundational event in the lore of Fazbear Entertainment, shaping the company's history and its future. The tragedy cast a long shadow over the franchise, influencing its policies, its public image, and its internal operations. The animatronics' aggressive behavior, driven by the souls of the murdered children, led to the implementation of strict safety protocols in the years that followed. These protocols were designed to prevent further incidents and protect both employees and customers. One of the most notable outcomes of these safety measures was the infamous Bite of 87, an event that would occur years later and further cement the animatronics' reputation as dangerous and unpredictable. Despite the efforts to move on, the souls of the children remained trapped within the animatronics, unable to find peace until they achieved justice. Their presence continued to haunt Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, manifesting in strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena. The animatronics, now vessels for the children's spirits, became both protectors and avengers, seeking to punish those who had wronged them. Their struggle for justice was a central theme in the ongoing saga of Fazbear Entertainment, driving the narrative forward and setting the stage for future events. The missing children incident also marked the beginning of William Afton's eventual downfall. His actions, driven by greed and a thirst for power, set in motion a chain of events that would lead to his own demise. The spirits of the children, bound to the animatronics, pursued him relentlessly, seeking to bring him to justice for his crimes. Afton's experiments with Remnant and his exploitation of the children's souls would come back to haunt him, as the very forces he sought to control turned against him. His story became intertwined with that of Fazbear Entertainment, creating a complex narrative of tragedy, betrayal, and retribution. As the years passed, the missing children incident remained a defining moment in the history of Fazbear Entertainment. It was a tragedy that shaped the company's identity, influencing its policies, its public image, and its internal operations. The incident became a cornerstone of the FNAF timeline, setting the stage for future events and establishing the themes of loss, justice, and redemption that would define the franchise. The souls of the children, trapped within the animatronics, continued to seek justice, their presence a constant reminder of the horrors that had transpired. The missing children incident also had a profound impact on the animatronics themselves. Once symbols of joy and entertainment, they became vessels for the spirits of the murdered children, their behavior reflecting the anger and sorrow of those they contained. The animatronics' transformation from friendly characters to vengeful entities was a central theme in the FNAF lore, highlighting the duality of their existence. They were both protectors and avengers, seeking to punish those who had wronged them while also protecting the innocent. The tragedy of the missing children incident also had a lasting impact on the public's perception of Fazbear Entertainment. The rumors and urban legends that emerged in the wake of the incident contributed to the company's tarnished reputation, making it difficult for the franchise to recover. The stories of haunted animatronics and missing children became ingrained in popular culture, turning Freddy Fazbear's Pizza into a symbol of horror and mystery. These rumors persisted for years, fueling the public's fascination with the franchise and contributing to its enduring legacy. In the years that followed, the missing children incident continued to influence the events of the FNAF timeline. The souls of the children, trapped within the animatronics, remained a central focus of the narrative, driving the story forward and shaping the fate of the characters. Their struggle for justice became a recurring theme, as they sought to bring William Afton to account for his crimes. The incident also set the stage for future tragedies, as the animatronics' aggressive behavior led to further incidents and reinforced the need for strict safety protocols. The missing children incident was a pivotal moment in the history of Fazbear Entertainment, a tragedy that shaped the company's identity and influenced its future. It was a defining event in the FNAF timeline, establishing the themes of loss, justice, and redemption that would define the franchise. The souls of the children, trapped within the animatronics, continued to seek justice, their presence a constant reminder of the horrors that had transpired. The incident set the stage for future events, including William Afton's eventual downfall and the creation of the FNAF timeline, ensuring that its impact would be felt for years to come. Following the abrupt shutdown of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1985 due to the infamous missing children incident, the franchise's parent company, Fazbear Entertainment, sought to distance itself from the tragedy. By 1987, they attempted a bold rebranding effort, reopening the pizzeria under the same name but with a radically redesigned aesthetic. This new iteration of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was brighter, cleaner, and explicitly marketed as a safe and secure family entertainment center, a deliberate contrast to the shadowy reputation of its predecessor. The animatronics, too, received a complete overhaul with the introduction of the so-called toy models. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, Mangle, and the diminutive Balloon Boy. These characters were sleeker, more colorful, and designed with a child-friendly appeal, their plastic shells and rounded features intended to appear less intimidating than the older, bulkier animatronics. However, the original animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, were not entirely discarded. Instead, they were relegated to a back room, officially designated for parts and repairs, though they remained inexplicably operational. Their presence in the building would prove significant, as their weathered endoskeletons and tattered suits carried with them the unresolved trauma of the 1985 murders. Meanwhile, another figure from the first location quietly persisted: the puppet, a tall, black and white animatronic with a haunting, mask-like face. Unlike the toys or the originals, the puppet was neither decommissioned nor redesigned, continuing its role as a silent guardian of the pizzeria, its movements seemingly autonomous and its motives inscrutable. To maintain the illusion of safety, Fazbear Entertainment hired a new night security guard, Jeremy Fitzgerald, in late 1987. His job was straightforward: monitor the animatronics during the graveyard shift and ensure they remained in their designated areas. Unbeknownst to Jeremy, however, the toys were equipped with experimental facial recognition software, a cutting edge for the time system tied to a criminal database. This technology was ostensibly implemented to prevent a repeat of the 1985 tragedy, allowing the animatronics to identify and deter potential threats. In practice, however, the system was flawed. Reports soon emerged of the toys behaving erratically, particularly around adult staff members. Their movements became twitchy, their eyes flickering with unnatural awareness, as if they were seeing something or someone that wasn't there. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Night guards reported the toy animatronics growing increasingly aggressive, their once friendly demeanor replaced by stalking behavior and unexplained mobility. They would vanish from their stages, reappearing in hallways or outside office doors, their servos whirring with unsettling precision. Most disturbingly, they seemed to fixate on Jeremy, as if his very presence triggered some malfunction in their programming. The puppet, meanwhile, was observed lingering near children during the day, its elongated limbs swaying as if positioning itself between them and some unseen danger. The root of this dysfunction would later be traced to deliberate tampering. A day shift security guard, operating under the alias Fritz Smith, had accessed the animatronics systems and altered their facial recognition parameters. This individual was, in reality, William Afton, the same man responsible for the 1985 murders, now returning to the scene of his crimes under a false identity. Afton's motives for sabotaging the toys remain debated. Some believe he was testing the limits of their aggression, while others argue he was covering his tracks, ensuring the animatronics would not recognize him as a threat. Whatever the case, his interference had catastrophic consequences. The toys, now unable to properly distinguish friend from foe, began treating all adults as potential criminals. Their once protective programming twisted into something predatory. Afton's presence did not go unnoticed by the puppet. Unlike the toys, the puppet's behavior was not governed by crude algorithms, but by something far more enigmatic. It seemed to recognize Afton for what he was, a predator, and responded by shadowing the children more closely, its movements becoming almost frantic in its attempts to shield them. But the puppet's efforts were not enough. Over a span of weeks, 5 more children vanished from the pizzeria, their disappearances eerily reminiscent of the 1985 incident. Witnesses reported seeing a figure in a yellow employee uniform, later identified as Afton, luring the children away with promises of secret rooms or backstage tours. Unlike the first massacre, however, there were no bodies left behind, no bloody scenes to clean up. The children simply vanished, leaving behind only rumors and a growing sense of dread among the staff. The pizzeria's management, desperate to avoid another scandal, downplayed the disappearances, attributing them to irresponsible parenting or runaway cases. But the damage was done. Parents began withdrawing their children from birthday parties, and the once bustling restaurant grew quieter by the day. The animatronics, now fully compromised, became uncontrollable, their aggressive behavior escalating to the point where employees refused to work near them. By the end of 1987, Fazbear Entertainment had no choice but to shutter the location permanently, marking the second time in 2 years that a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had closed under a cloud of tragedy. Yet the story did not end there. The toy animatronics, along with the original models and the puppet, were sealed inside the abandoned building, left to gather dust alongside the secrets they carried. And though the company would later claim that the toys were dismantled and scrapped, rumors persisted that their endoskeletons, like those of the original animatronics, remained active, their programming still corrupted by Afton's meddling. As for the puppet, it would continue its lonely vigil, its purpose still unclear, its role in the unfolding tragedy only deepening the mystery of what truly happened in 1987. But this was not the last the world would hear of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza or of William Afton. The events of 1987 were merely a prelude to a far darker chapter, one that would see the franchise's legacy irrevocably tainted by bloodshed, betrayal, and the restless spirits of the dead. For now, however, the doors were closed, the lights were off, and the animatronics stood motionless in the dark, waiting for a night that would never come. Word count 119. Note, this is part 1 of 2 for this section. The remaining portion will cover the bite of 87, the aftermath of the closure, and the fate of Jeremy Fitzgerald tying into the next era. As the puppet's grim task of stuffing the victims' bodies into the original animatronics reached its conclusion, the souls of the murdered children became irrevocably bound to the suits. This act of desperation, driven by the puppet's protective instincts, transformed Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy into vessels of restless spirits. These animatronics, once beloved icons of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, now harbored a deep-seated hostility toward adults, particularly those who resembled their killer. Their movements became erratic, their behavior unpredictable, and their once cheerful appearances took on a menacing air. The restaurant's staff, already grappling with rumors of missing children, began to notice these changes, though the true cause remained shrouded in mystery. The final day of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's operation in 1987 was marked by a birthday party, a seemingly innocent event that would culminate in tragedy. Jeremy Fitzgerald, a security guard who had recently transferred to the day shift, was tasked with overseeing the festivities. As children laughed and played, the toy animatronics, designed to be safer and more advanced than their predecessors, performed their routines. However, beneath their polished exteriors, these machines were far from reliable. The Bite of 87, one of the most infamous incidents in the franchise's lore, occurred during this party. One of the toy animatronics, widely believed to be mangled due to its aggressive and unpredictable nature, attacked a victim. The exact identity of the victim remains debated, but many theorize it was Jeremy himself. The attack resulted in the removal of the victim's frontal lobe, a catastrophic injury that left them alive but severely disabled. The aftermath of the Bite of 87 was swift and devastating. News of the incident spread rapidly, fueled by sensationalist media coverage that painted Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a hazardous environment. The public, already wary due to the unresolved missing children incidents, turned against the franchise. Parents demanded answers, and the restaurant's reputation crumbled under the weight of negative publicity. Faced with mounting legal and financial pressures, the owners of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza made the decision to close the establishment once again. This marked the end of an era, as the once thriving pizzeria was forced to shutter its doors for good. In the wake of the closure, the toy animatronics were deemed unsafe and swiftly decommissioned. These machines, designed to be state-of-the-art, were disassembled for parts, their endoskeletons destroyed to prevent any further incidents. Meanwhile, the original animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, were placed in storage. Though they were no longer in use, the spirits within them remained active, their restless energy a testament to the unresolved trauma of their deaths. These animatronics, now relics of a bygone era, would later resurface in future iterations of the franchise, their haunting presence a constant reminder of the tragedies that had unfolded. William Afton, the man behind the murders, saw the closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as an opportunity to cover his tracks. Determined to silence the spirits of his victims and destroy any evidence of his crimes, he returned to the abandoned restaurant under the cover of darkness. Armed with tools, Afton dismantled the original animatronics, tearing them apart piece by piece. However, his efforts to eradicate the spirits proved futile. As he worked, the children's souls confronted him in the back room, their collective rage manifesting as a terrifying force. Overwhelmed by fear, Afton fled into the abandoned safe room, a hidden space within the restaurant designed to be inaccessible to both customers and animatronics. In his desperation, Afton sought refuge in the Spring Bonnie suit, a spring-locked animatronic costume that had been retired due to its dangerous design. The suit, which required precise calibration to function safely, was never intended to be worn by a living person. As Afton donned the suit, the spring locks, mechanisms designed to hold the animatronic's endoskeleton in place, failed catastrophically. The suit's components collapsed inward, crushing Afton's body and trapping him in a state of agonizing limbo. Though he was presumed dead, Afton's story was far from over. Years later, he would reemerge as Springtrap, a grotesque fusion of man and machine driven by a malevolent will to survive. The closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987 marked a turning point in the franchise's lore, setting the stage for the events that would follow. The Bite of 87, the dismantling of the animatronics, and Afton's transformation into Springtrap were pivotal moments that deepened the mystery and horror surrounding the series. These events not only closed the chapter on the original pizzeria, but also laid the groundwork for the enduring legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a legacy defined by tragedy, vengeance, and the unrelenting pursuit of justice by the spirits of the innocent. As we delve deeper into the timeline, the consequences of these events will continue to unfold, revealing new layers of intrigue and terror in the ever expanding world of Five Nights at Freddy's. The puppet's role in binding the children's souls to the animatronics cannot be overstated. This act, born of grief and a desire to protect, ensured that the spirits of the victims would remain tethered to the physical world, unable to move on. The puppet itself, a mysterious and enigmatic figure, became a guardian of sorts, watching over the animatronics and ensuring that the children's voices were not silenced. Its presence, often depicted as a shadowy figure with a haunting melody, added an additional layer of complexity to the lore, raising questions about its origins and motivations. The original animatronics, now possessed by the spirits of the murdered children, exhibited behaviors that were both tragic and terrifying. Their hostility toward adults, particularly those who resembled their killer, was a manifestation of their unresolved trauma. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, once symbols of joy and entertainment, became harbingers of fear, their movements guided by a desire for vengeance. This transformation was not immediate, but rather a gradual process, as the spirits struggled to adapt to their new existence within the animatronic shells. The birthday party held on the final day of operation was a stark contrast to the grim events that had preceded it. Children laughed and played, oblivious to the darkness that lurked within the restaurant. Jeremy Fitzgerald, tasked with overseeing the festivities, found himself in a precarious position. As a security guard, he was responsible for ensuring the safety of the guests, but the unpredictable behavior of the toy animatronics made this task nearly impossible. The bite of 87, which occurred during this party, was a tragic reminder of the dangers posed by these machines. The toy animatronics, designed to be safer and more advanced than their predecessors, were ultimately a failure. Their advanced facial recognition software, intended to identify potential threats, proved unreliable, leading to false positives and aggressive behavior. Mangle, in particular, was a source of constant trouble. Its disjointed and damaged state made it unpredictable, and its aggressive tendencies were a significant factor in the bite of 87. The incident, which resulted in the removal of the victim's frontal lobe, was a turning point for the franchise, leading to the closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the decommissioning of the toy animatronics. The aftermath of the bite of 87 was marked by widespread panic and media coverage. Parents, horrified by the incident, demanded answers, and the restaurant's owners were unable to provide satisfactory explanations. The negative publicity surrounding the missing children incidents and the bite of 87 ultimately led to the closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The toy animatronics, deemed unsafe, were disassembled for parts, their endoskeletons destroyed to prevent any further incidents. The original animatronics, now possessed by the spirits of the murdered children, were placed in storage, their haunting presence a reminder of the tragedies that had unfolded. William Afton's return to the abandoned restaurant was driven by a desire to cover his tracks and silence the spirits of his victims. Armed with tools, he dismantled the original animatronics, tearing them apart piece by piece. However, his efforts to eradicate the spirits proved futile. As he worked, the children's souls confronted him in the back room, their collective rage manifesting as a terrifying force. Overwhelmed by fear, Afton fled into the abandoned safe room, a hidden space within the restaurant designed to be inaccessible to both customers and animatronics. In his desperation, Afton sought refuge in the Spring Bonnie suit, a spring-locked animatronic costume that had been retired due to its dangerous design. The suit, which required precise calibration to function safely, was never intended to be worn by a living person. As Afton donned the suit, the spring locks, mechanisms designed to hold the animatronic's endoskeleton in place, failed catastrophically. The suit's components collapsed inward, crushing Afton's body and trapping him in a state of agonizing limbo. Though he was presumed dead, Afton's story was far from over. Years later, he would reemerge as Springtrap, a grotesque fusion of man and machine driven by a malevolent will to survive. The closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987 marked a turning point in the franchise's lore, setting the stage for the events that would follow. The Bite of '87, the dismantling of the animatronics, and Afton's transformation into Springtrap were pivotal moments that deepened the mystery and horror surrounding the series. These events not only closed the chapter on the original pizzeria, but also laid the groundwork for the enduring legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a legacy defined by tragedy, vengeance, and the unrelenting pursuit of justice by the spirits of the innocent. As we delve deeper into the timeline, the consequences of these events will continue to unfold, revealing new layers of intrigue and terror in the ever-expanding world of Five Nights at Freddy's. Following the abrupt closure of the original Fredbear's Family Diner and the subsequent shuttering of the first Freddy Fazbear's Pizza due to the infamous missing children incident, the franchise attempted a cautious revival in 1993. This marked the beginning of what fans now refer to as the FNAF 1 era, the foundation of the entire Five Nights at Freddy's mythos. The company, desperate to distance itself from its grim past, reopened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in a smaller, more budget-conscious location, reusing the original animatronics, Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate Fox from the previous restaurant. These characters, once beloved mascots, now carried the weight of unspeakable tragedy. Though the management insisted they were merely machines, their dark history reduced to rumors and urban legends. The rebranding effort was a calculated move. Posters and promotional material avoided any mention of the earlier tragedies, focusing instead on the restaurant's family-friendly atmosphere. The animatronics were given superficial updates, fresh coats of paint, routine maintenance, but beneath the surface, something was deeply wrong. The spirits of the 5 children murdered by William Afton years prior still lingered, their souls bound to the very machines their killer had used to conceal his crimes. Though the company dismissed reports of strange activity as mechanical malfunctions, the truth was far more sinister. The animatronics were no longer just machines. They were vessels, driven by a restless need for justice, or, in their confusion, violence. Enter Mike Schmidt, the night guard hired to oversee the restaurant during its late hours. His role seemed simple enough: monitor the security cameras, ensure nothing went awry, and survive until 6 a.m. But from his first night, it became clear that this job was anything but ordinary. The animatronics, supposedly programmed to remain on stage during off hours, began to move on their own. Freddy would vanish from the cameras, only to reappear in the hallway outside the office. Bonnie's hollow eyes would stare unblinking from the darkness of the dining area. Chica's jerky movements near the kitchen hinted at something more than faulty servos. And Foxy, long since relegated to Pirate's Cove after being deemed out of order, would sprint down the hallway in a frenzied dash toward the security office. Mike quickly realized these weren't random glitches. The animatronics were hunting him. Their behavior grew increasingly aggressive with each passing night. At first, they moved slowly, almost cautiously, as if testing the limits of their newfound autonomy. But by the third night, their movements became deliberate, purposeful. Freddy's signature laugh echoed through the building when the power ran low, a taunting reminder that he was closer than he appeared. Bonnie and Chica would crowd the doors, their distorted faces pressing against the glass, while Foxy's sprint left Mike with only seconds to react. The animatronics weren't just malfunctioning, they were alive, and they saw Mike as a threat. The reason for their hostility lay in the unresolved trauma of the missing children incident. The spirits of Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, the five victims of William Afton's 1985 killing spree, had possessed the animatronics, their anguish twisting the machines into instruments of vengeance. Yet their memories were fractured. They didn't recognize friends from foes. To them, any adult in the building could be their murderer, and their programming, originally designed to entertain, now compelled them to stuff any intruder into a spare animatronic suit, a grotesque echo of Afton's own methods. Mike, an outsider in the wrong place at the wrong time, became their target. As the nights wore on, Mike pieced together the restaurant's grim history through scattered clues. The newspapers plastered on the walls, though faded, hinted at the missing children incident, referencing an unspecified tragedy that had occurred years prior. The paycheck stubs, stamped with the company's blatant indifference, Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for death or dismemberment, underscored the management's willingness to ignore the obvious danger. Even the hourly wage, a meager $120, $50 for a job that risked life and limb, spoke volumes about how little the company valued its employees. But the most damning evidence came from the phone guy, a previous night guard whose recorded messages served as Mike's only lifeline. Phone guy's tapes, though often cheerful in tone, were laced with unsettling revelations. He explained that the animatronic's aggressive behavior was nothing to worry about, chalking it up to a quirk in their facial recognition systems. According to him, the robots were programmed to roam at night to prevent their joints from locking up, but due to a bug, they sometimes mistook humans for endoskeletons without costumes. This was a half-truth at best. The animatronics weren't confused. They were angry. Phone Guy's later messages grew increasingly frantic, particularly on night 4, when he admitted that the animatronics had been acting strangely toward staff, even staring at employees, as if they recognized them. His final message, cut short by banging and a guttural scream, confirmed Mike's worst fears. The animatronics were not just dangerous, they were lethal. Survival became a matter of resource management. The security office's doors, powered by a finite supply of electricity, were the only barrier between Mike and the animatronics. Freddy, ever the strategist, would disable the cameras when the power dipped below 10%, forcing Mike to rely on sound alone to track his movements. Bonnie and Chica prioritized the left and right doors respectively, their distorted groans signaling their proximity. Foxy, though confined to Pirate's Cove, required constant monitoring. If left unchecked, he would bolt toward the office with terrifying speed. And then there was the Golden Freddy Easter egg, a spectral version of Freddy that could appear without warning, crashing the game and serving as a chilling reminder that some forces in the building defied all logic. By the 5th night, the restaurant's facade of normalcy had completely unraveled. The animatronics' attacks were no longer sporadic. They were coordinated, relentless. Mike, running on fumes, had to make split-second decisions. Conserve power for the doors, or risk a camera check to track Freddy's movements. The phone guy's absence loomed large, his fate a grim preview of what awaited Mike if he slipped up. And then, on night 6, the paychecks stopped coming. The company, it seemed, had written him off. Yet Mike pressed on, driven by a mix of desperation and determination. The final night, dubbed Custom Night in the game's challenge mode, was a gauntlet, with the animatronic's aggression dialed to its peak. Surviving it required near-perfect execution, a testament to how far the situation had escalated. But beyond the gameplay, This week of terror served a greater narrative purpose. It exposed the rot at the heart of Fazbear Entertainment. The company's willful ignorance, its refusal to acknowledge the animatronic's possession, and its blatant disregard for employee safety all pointed to a cycle of negligence that would repeat itself for decades to come. And then, abruptly, it was over. Whether Mike was fired for tampering with the animatronics, as his pink slip claimed, or whether he quit, the restaurant's fate was sealed. The FNAF 1 location, like its predecessors, would soon close its doors, its legacy reduced to another cautionary tale in the Fazbear franchise's bloodstained history. But the animatronics and the spirits within them were far from finished. Their story, like William Afton's, was only beginning. Note: this segment covers the first half of the FNAF 1 era. The second half will delve into the aftermath, including the implications of Mike's survival, the truth behind his identity, and the lingering consequences of the animatronic's possession. As the nights progress at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1993, Mike Schmidt's shifts grow increasingly perilous. Phone Guy's warnings about Foxy, the animatronic pirate fox stowed away in Pirate Cove, prove especially critical. Unlike the other animatronics, Foxy doesn't rely on stealth. Instead, he bursts into a full sprint when provoked, charging down the hallway toward the office with startling speed. Phone Guy advises Mike to monitor Pirate Cove frequently, as Foxy's behavior is erratic and unpredictable. If left unchecked, the animatronic will emerge from his curtained enclosure, his tattered endoskeleton visible beneath his peeling suit, and make a beeline for the security office. Mike learns quickly that neglecting Foxy, even for a short time, can have dire consequences, as the animatronic's sudden appearances are often accompanied by a jarring, glitchy scream that signals an imminent attack. Freddy Fazbear himself, the restaurant's namesake, becomes an even greater threat as the nights wear on. While Bonnie and Chica rely on direct confrontation, Freddy exhibits a chilling level of strategy. He lingers in the shadows, his glowing eyes barely visible in the darkness just beyond the office door. Unlike the others, Freddy waits for moments when Mike is distracted, when the cameras are down or when the power is low, to make his move. His signature jingle, a slow, distorted rendition of Pop Goes the Weasel, plays as a grim warning that he's nearby. If Mike fails to keep an eye on Freddy's movements, the animatronic bear will seize his opportunity, slipping into the office unnoticed until it's too late. This calculated behavior suggests something far more sinister than mere malfunctioning programming. The tension reaches a breaking point on night 4 when Phone Guy's final message plays. His voice, usually composed and professional, is now strained with panic. The sounds of banging metal and distorted animatronic screeches echo in the background as he frantically explains that the animatronics are acting aggressively toward him. He warns Mike that they seem to mistake adults for endoskeletons, a flimsy excuse that barely masks the horrifying truth. The call cuts off abruptly with a garbled scream, leaving Mike alone with the grim realization that Phone Guy has fallen victim to the very animatronics he once sought to control. This moment marks a turning point. With Phone Guy gone, Mike is left without guidance, forced to rely entirely on his own instincts to survive the final night. Night 5 is the most harrowing yet. The animatronics are relentless, their movements more aggressive and unpredictable than ever. Bonnie and Chica appear at the doors with alarming frequency, their hollow eyes fixed on Mike as if driven by something beyond mere programming. Freddy's strategic assaults grow bolder, his jingle taunting Mike from the darkness. Foxy's sprints become nearly constant, forcing Mike to divide his attention between Pirate Cove and the other threats. The power drain is catastrophic. Every second counts, and Mike must ration his limited resources carefully. Surviving this night is a feat of endurance, a testament to his ability to adapt under unimaginable pressure. Behind the scenes, the restaurant's management is scrambling to address the growing crisis. Reports of the animatronic's erratic behavior have prompted internal investigations, but their efforts are woefully inadequate. Technicians inspect the machines for mechanical faults, unaware of the supernatural forces at play. The truth that the animatronics are possessed by the spirits of children murdered years earlier by William Afton remains hidden. The company's dismissive attitude toward the rumors of hauntings reflects their desperation to avoid scandal, but their attempts to downplay the incidents only exacerbate the problem. Then, the odor becomes impossible to ignore. Employees and customers alike begin complaining of a foul, rotting smell emanating from the animatronics. The stench is so overpowering that it permeates the entire building, driving away patrons and raising suspicions. Unbeknownst to the staff, the source of the smell is the decaying remains of the murdered children, whose bodies were stuffed into the animatronic suits by Afton himself. The company, still unwilling to confront the horrifying reality, chalks it up to poor hygiene and orders the suits to be cleaned. But no amount of sanitization can remove the lingering evidence of the crimes hidden within the animatronics' endoskeletons. As the restaurant's reputation plummets, customer attendance dwindles to almost nothing. Parents, alarmed by rumors of aggressive animatronics and unexplained disappearances, refuse to bring their children to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The once bustling establishment becomes a ghost town, its bright colors and cheerful decor now tinged with an air of dread. The financial strain is insurmountable. Repairs, lawsuits, and lost revenue push the company to the brink. Faced with mounting safety concerns and unsustainable losses, management makes the decision to close Freddy Fazbear's Pizza for good. The animatronics, still possessed by the restless spirits of the murdered children, are left abandoned in the shuttered restaurant. With no one to maintain them, they remain frozen in their last active states, their programming locked in an endless loop of movement and aggression. The spirits, trapped within the suits, are unable to move on, their suffering unresolved. The building itself becomes a tomb, a silent monument to the tragedies that unfolded within its walls. Mike Schmidt, having survived his week of terror, doesn't escape unscathed. On his final paycheck, he receives a termination slip citing two damning reasons: tampering with the animatronics and odor. The company, eager to shift blame, paints Mike as the problem rather than acknowledging the animatronic's true nature. Whether this is a deliberate cover-up or simply corporate negligence is unclear, but the result is the same. Mike is dismissed, his ordeal dismissed as misconduct. His fate after this remains a mystery, but his survival through 5 nights of relentless horror suggests a resilience few could match. The closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1993 marks the end of an era, the so-called classic FNAF period. The animatronics, the building, and the dark secrets they contain are left behind, but the story is far from over. The spirits of the children remain, their voices unheard, their justice unserved. Meanwhile, the legacy of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza lingers in the public consciousness, a cautionary tale of corporate negligence and unchecked evil. Though the doors are locked and the lights are off, the nightmare is not yet over. The stage is set for the next chapter in the franchise's twisted timeline, where the consequences of these events will continue to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. And so, the FNAF 1 era comes to a close, not with resolution, but with unresolved dread. The animatronics stand motionless in the darkness, waiting. The spirits cry out for vengeance. And somewhere, hidden in the shadows, the truth true architect of this horror watches, his work unfinished. The year 1993 may be the end of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, but it is only the beginning of the deeper mysteries yet to come. Following the abrupt closure of the original Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1985 due to the infamous missing children incident, the franchise lay dormant for 2 years, until 1987 when Fazbear Entertainment attempted to revitalize its image with a grand reopening. This new iteration of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, now outfitted with cutting-edge animatronics and a fresh, child-friendly aesthetic, was meant to distance itself from the tragedies of the past. But as we'll see, the shadows of those events would not stay buried. The year 1987 marks the beginning of what fans now refer to as the FNAF 2 era, a period defined by technological innovation, corporate negligence, and the deepening of the supernatural horrors lurking beneath the surface. At the heart of this new location were the toy animatronics, a sleek, modernized lineup designed to be safer and more interactive than their predecessors. Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica were brightly colored, with smooth plastic shells and advanced facial recognition software meant to prevent another security breach. Then there was Mangle, a once intact animatronic fox meant for kids to take apart and reassemble, now left in a state of perpetual disrepair due to relentless toddler interference. And of course, Balloon Boy, the diminutive figure who roamed the halls with his signature balloon and unnerving grin. These animatronics were a far cry from the weathered, endoskeleton-heavy designs of the original cast, but their cheerful exteriors belied a darker truth, one tied to the puppet, the enigmatic figure who had been present since the earliest days of Freddy's. The puppet, also known as the marionette, was no ordinary animatronic. Its origins traced back to the tragic death of Henry Emily's daughter, Charlotte, whose spirit now inhabited the black and white figure. Unlike the other animatronics, the puppet was not bound by programming or mechanics. It was a vessel of pure supernatural will, acting as a guide for the lost souls of murdered children. In the FNAF 2 location, the puppet took on a more active role, orchestrating the possession of the toy animatronics by the spirits of 5 new victims. These children, whose deaths were hinted at in the cryptic Save Them minigame, were lured to the restaurant and killed by an unseen assailant, widely believed to be William Afton, returning under the guise of a security guard. Their bloodstains were hastily cleaned from the floors, their disappearances swept under the rug, but their souls lingered seeking justice. Enter Jeremy Fitzgerald, the night guard hired to oversee the restaurant during its late hours. Jeremy's job, as explained by the ever-present phone guy, was to monitor the animatronic's behavior through a network of security cameras while surviving until 6 a.m. But from the very first night, it became clear that something was deeply wrong. The toy animatronics, despite their supposedly friendly programming, grew increasingly aggressive as the week progressed. Their facial recognition systems, meant to identify threats, had been tampered with. Now they saw all adults as potential dangers. Phone Guy's instructions grew more frantic, warning Jeremy to wear his Freddy Fazbear mask as a last-ditch defense, a tactic that only delayed the inevitable. Meanwhile, in the back room of the pizzeria, the withered animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, sat in disrepair. These were the original animatronics from the 1985 location, stripped down for parts to retrofit the new toys. But they were far from inactive. The spirits of the original missing children still dwelled within them, restless and vengeful. Unlike the toys, whose movements were dictated by faulty programming, the Wizards were driven by pure, unfiltered rage. Their broken limbs and exposed endoskeletons made them even more terrifying as they lurched through the shadows, their hollow eyes fixed on Jeremy. The puppet, ever the puppet master, played a crucial role in this unfolding nightmare. Each night, it emerged from its music box, its elongated limbs gliding through the halls as it activated the other animatronics. Its music, a haunting rendition of My Grandfather's Clock, served as both a lullaby and a death knell. If Jeremy failed to wind the music box, the puppet would enter his office, sealing his fate. But its influence extended beyond mere mechanics. It was the bridge between the living and the dead, ensuring that the spirits of the murdered children found their way into the animatronics. By the fifth night, Jeremy's situation had become dire. The toys moved with predatory precision, their once friendly faces now twisted into grotesque expressions. Mangle, despite being little more than a tangled mess of wires, crawled across the ceiling like a spider, its distorted voice crackling through the vents. Balloon Boy, though harmless in appearance, drained Jeremy's flashlight batteries, leaving him vulnerable. And then there were the Wizards, their groans echoing from the back room as they inched closer each night. Phone Guy's messages took on a tone of desperation, revealing fragments of the restaurant's dark history, the rumors of foul play, the disappearances, the blood. It was during this time that Jeremy uncovered the Save Them minigame, a hidden piece of the puzzle that revealed the fate of the 5 new victims. In this pixelated nightmare, he took control of Freddy, navigating the restaurant to find the lifeless bodies of children scattered across the floor. The puppet appeared at the end, its message clear. Save them. But it was too late. Their souls had already been claimed, their voices now part of the chorus of the animatronics. The toys, once thought to be mere machines, were now vessels of vengeance, their glowing eyes reflecting the pain of the innocent. As the week reached its climax, Jeremy realized the horrifying truth. The withered animatronics were not just haunted by the original missing children. They were the same souls, trapped in broken shells, forced to relive their suffering. The puppet had ensured that no spirit would be left behind, binding them to the very place where they had been taken. And now they saw Jeremy not as a protector, but as another faceless adult to punish. The final night brought with it an unprecedented onslaught. The animatronics moved faster, their attacks more relentless. Phone Guy's last message was cut short, his voice replaced by static. Jeremy, armed with only a flashlight and a mask, faced the full fury of the possessed toys and the Wizards. But the true horror lay in the puppet's final act, its music box winding down, its shadow stretching across the office as it prepared to claim another soul. This was the FNAF 2 era in its purest form, a cycle of violence, a corporation's desperate attempt to bury its sins, and the unyielding wrath of the dead. And as we'll see in the next part, Jeremy's story was far from over, because in the world of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, no one truly escapes. As the nights progress at the rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987, the animatronic's behavior grows increasingly erratic. Phone Guy's recordings reveal a critical detail. The toy animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Mangle, and Balloon Boy, are equipped with advanced facial recognition software designed to identify and deter potential threats, particularly criminals. This system, intended to enhance security, becomes the source of the restaurant's downfall. Due to a combination of tampering and technical malfunctions, later implied to be the result of the vengeful spirit of the puppet interfering with their programming, the animatronics begin misidentifying staff members as threats. Night Guard Jeremy Fitzgerald, despite being an innocent employee, is flagged as a target. The toys' once friendly demeanor shifts into relentless aggression, their movements becoming more calculated and predatory with each passing night. Jeremy's survival through 5 nights of this escalating hostility is a testament to both his resourcefulness and the sheer luck required to evade animatronics that now view him as an intruder. The puppet, ever watchful from its music box, continues to manipulate the situation, its motives unclear, but its influence undeniable. Meanwhile, the withered animatronics, original models from the previous location, left in disrepair, remain dormant in the back room, their hollow eyes so hinting at the tragedies they've witnessed. Though they are not the primary threat during Jeremy's shifts, their presence serves as a grim reminder of the franchise's dark history. The culmination of these events arrives on the day shift, following Jeremy's fifth night. The Bite of 87, one of the most infamous incidents in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's history, occurs when one of the animatronics, most likely Toy Bonnie or Mangle, given their proximity to the day shift staff, attacks an employee. The victim's identity is never confirmed, but the injuries are catastrophic: severe damage to the frontal lobe, resulting in loss of motor function and cognitive impairment. The exact circumstances remain shrouded in mystery, but the aftermath is clear. The incident forces the restaurant's immediate closure, marking the end of the toy animatronic's brief reign. In the wake of the bite, the toy models are deemed unsafe. Their advanced technology, once hailed as a breakthrough, is now seen as a liability. They are dismantled and scrapped, their parts either repurposed or discarded entirely. The withered animatronics, however, are spared destruction. Instead, they are stored away, kept in the hopes that they might one day be refurbished and reused, a decision that will have dire consequences in the years to come. The puppet, ever elusive, avoids deactivation, continuing its silent vigil over the spirits trapped within the animatronics. Its role in the events of 1987 is subtle but undeniable, as it ensures the children's souls remain tethered to their mechanical prisons. Jeremy Fitzgerald's fate after the bite of 87 is left ambiguous. Some speculate he was the victim, while others believe he survived only to vanish into obscurity. The lack of concrete information has fueled countless theories, but one thing is certain: his story, like so many others tied to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, ends in uncertainty and dread. With the restaurant closed and the toys destroyed, the legacy of the 1987 location becomes a cautionary tale. The company's attempts to innovate and distance itself from past tragedies backfire spectacularly, proving that the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza are not so easily escaped. The events of Five Nights at Freddy's Toys conclude with the animatronics deactivated and the building abandoned, but the underlying darkness persists. The spirits remain, the puppet watches, and the stage is set for the next chapter in the franchise's grim timeline. The fallout from the bite of 87 reverberates through the company's decisions in the years that follow. The decision to scrap the toys and preserve the withered animatronics hints at a cyclical nature to the franchise's tragedies, a pattern of repetition that will soon play out again. Meanwhile, the puppet's actions in 1987 suggest a deeper understanding of the animatronic's possessed nature, as if it is orchestrating events to ensure the spirits' voices are never silenced. This era also introduces the concept of facial recognition as a double-edged sword, a theme that will resurface in later installments with even deadlier consequences. As the timeline moves forward, the repercussions of 1987 become impossible to ignore. The withered animatronics, though dormant for now, will return. The puppet's influence will grow, and the name Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, despite its tarnished reputation, will rise again, because in this world, the show must go on, no matter the cost. The FNAF 2 era may be over, but its impact is far from forgotten. It is a pivotal moment in the saga, a turning point that bridges the past horrors of the original location to the even darker future that awaits. The year 1987 also raises questions about the true nature of the animatronics' aggression. Were the toys truly malfunctioning, or were they acting under the influence of the murdered children's spirits? The game's hidden minigames suggest the latter, depicting shadowy figures and cryptic messages that imply the souls are still seeking justice. The puppet's role in these minigames is particularly telling, as it is often shown guiding or protecting the other animatronics, reinforcing its status as a guardian of the dead. Another layer to the 1987 mystery is the presence of Shadow Bonnie and Shadow Freddy, enigmatic entities that appear sporadically throughout the game. These shadowy counterparts to the main animatronics have no clear explanation, but their appearances are often tied to moments of heightened supernatural activity. Some believe they are manifestations of the animatronic's agony, while others theorize they are the spirits of employees who died during the franchise's earlier years. Whatever their origin, their presence adds to the growing sense that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is a place where the line between the living and the dead is dangerously thin. The closure of the 1987 location also marks a shift in the company's public image. The bite of 87 becomes a scandal that the franchise cannot outrun, referenced in future games as a cautionary tale about cutting corners in robotics. The decision to reuse the withered animatronics, despite their connection to the original missing children incidents, speaks to the company's desperation to maintain its brand, even at the risk of repeating past mistakes. This cycle of negligence and tragedy is a recurring theme in the FNAF series, one that will only escalate as the timeline progresses. The puppet's actions during this era are perhaps the most intriguing. Unlike the other animatronics, it does not attack Jeremy directly. Instead, it seems to operate on a different level of awareness, as if it understands the bigger picture. Its music box, which Jeremy must wind to keep it docile, serves as a metaphor for control. The moment the music stops, the puppet moves, and the night's horrors escalate. This duality of protector and predator makes the puppet one of the most complex characters in the franchise, a being whose motives are as enigmatic as its origins. As the dust settles on the 1987 location, the pieces are in place for the next phase of the story. The withered animatronics, though damaged, are intact. The puppet remains at large, and the company, despite its failures, is not yet ready to abandon the Freddy Fazbear name. The stage is set for the events of Saudi 5 Nights at Freddy's Wonderways, where the horrors of the past will return with a vengeance. But that is a story for another time. For now, the FNAF 2 era stands as a testament to the franchise's ability to reinvent itself while staying true to its roots, a cycle of innovation and catastrophe that will define the series for years to come. The legacy of 1987 is one of missed opportunities and unavoidable doom. The toys, with their bright colors and friendly designs, were meant to symbolize a fresh start. Instead, they became harbingers of one of the franchise's most infamous tragedies. The withered animatronics, though sidelined for much of the game, serve as a bridge between the old and the new, their scarred exteriors hiding the souls that refuse to move on. And the puppet, ever present, ever watching, ensures that the story is far from over. As we move forward in the timeline, the consequences of these events will ripple outward, shaping the future of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in ways no one could have predicted. The Bite of 87 is not just an incident, it is a turning point, a moment where the franchise's darkest secrets begin to unravel. And though the doors of the 1987 location may be closed, the spirits within are anything but silent. Their story is far from finished, and the next chapter promises to be even more chilling. Following the closure of the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in 1987, the franchise lay dormant for decades, its tragedies fading into urban legend. But in 2023, 30 years after the horrific events of the original location's final nights, Fazbear Entertainment would make a fateful decision to resurrect its tarnished brand in the most macabre way imaginable. This is the era of Five Nights at Freddy's 301, a story of corporate opportunism, a monster unearthed, and the consequences of disturbing graves best left sealed. By the early 2020s, the legends of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza had taken on a life of their own. Whispered accounts of missing children, haunted animatronics, and a yellow rabbit lurking in the shadows had become campfire fodder. Fazbear Entertainment, now under new management and eager to rebrand, saw an opportunity in this notoriety. Rather than shy away from their dark past, they leaned into it, approving the creation of Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction, a purpose-built haunted house designed to capitalize on the very myths that had once driven them to ruin. The irony was palpable, a company profiting from the tragedies it had tried so hard to bury. The Fazbear's Fright Team, a group of contractors and horror enthusiasts, was tasked with bringing this vision to life. Their mission was simple: scour the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations for artifacts, animatronics, and anything else that could lend authenticity to the experience. They combed through the ruins of the original 1980s pizzeria, a building left to rot after its closure. Among the moldering party decorations and broken arcade cabinets, they found relics of a bygone era: old security cameras, faded posters advertising Freddy and his band, and even the original animatronic endoskeletons, stripped of their outer shells. But their most significant discovery lay hidden behind a false wall, in a room that had been sealed off for decades. There, slumped in the corner, was Itsterix's Springtrap, a nightmarish fusion of man and machine. The decayed Spring Bonnie animatronic suit, once part of Fazbear Entertainment's discontinued Springlock line, now housed the mummified remains of William Afton, the architect of so much suffering. The Springlock suits, a hybrid design allowing them to function as both animatronics and wearable costumes, had been decommissioned after multiple gruesome failures. But Afton, ever the engineer, had repurposed Spring Bonnie for his own ends. Trapped inside the suit after a catastrophic malfunction, a fate poetic in its irony, he had died there, his body left to fester as the pizzeria crumbled around him. Unaware of the horror they had uncovered, the Fazbear's Fright Team hauled Springtrap back to their attraction, viewing him as the ultimate centerpiece. To them, he was just a prop, a grisly mannequin to thrill visitors. They didn't realize the suit's occupant was still aware. William Afton, though physically broken, had never truly died. His soul, sustained by his own malevolence and the lingering energy of his victims, clung to the suit, waiting. When the Fazbear's Fright Team powered up their systems, they unknowingly reactivated him. The lights behind Springtrap's eyes flickered to life, and Afton, now more machine than man, began to move. His motivations were as twisted as ever. Survival, yes, but also the same predatory instinct that had driven him to hunt children. The attraction became his new hunting ground. By day, he played the part of a lifeless exhibit. By night, he stalked the halls, his movements jerky but deliberate, drawn to the living like a shark to blood. The Fazbear's Fright Team, oblivious to the danger, hired a night guard to monitor the attraction during operational hours. This guard, like so many before them, would soon find themselves at the center of a nightmare. The guard's job was straightforward in theory: watch the cameras, maintain the systems, and ensure nothing went wrong. But Fazbear's Fright was a far cry from the pizzerias of old. The building was smaller, more cramped, its corridors lined with relics of a bloody past. The ventilation system, hastily installed and poorly maintained, pumped stale, contaminated air through the vents. This faulty system would prove almost as dangerous as Springtrap himself. Exposure to the foul air induced vivid hallucinations, causing the guard to see the phantom animatronics, ghostly apparitions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and others, their burned and withered forms lunging from the shadows. These phantoms weren't physical entities, but manifestations of the guard's deteriorating psyche, fueled by the trauma embedded in the artifacts around them. Meanwhile, Springtrap grew bolder. Afton's presence in the suit warped the very fabric of Fazbear's fright, amplifying its paranormal activity. Audio systems glitched, playing distorted snippets of children's laughter or static laden screams. Animatronic parts twitched without power. The guard, scrambling to survive, relied on a pared down security system. Cameras to track Springtrap's movements, audio lures to distract him, and ventilation reboots to clear their head. But Afton was cunning. He learned, adapted, and toyed with his prey, sometimes retreating into the shadows, only to reappear inches from the guard's face. Amid the terror, the guard uncovered fragments of the truth. Scattered throughout the attraction were audio logs, old training tapes, and newspaper clippings recounting Fazbear Entertainment's history. Some were corporate whitewashing, downplaying the tragedies. Others were more revealing, hinting at the missing children incident, the bite of 87, and the rumors of a killer in a yellow suit. Piecing together these clues, the guard began to understand what they were up against. Not just a malfunctioning animatronic, but something far worse, a monster who had cheated death. As the nights wore on, the line between reality and hallucination blurred. The phantoms became more aggressive, their appearances timed with Springtrap's approach. The guard's efforts to keep him at bay grew increasingly desperate, and all the while, Afton watched, waited, and plotted. He had survived fire, decay, and time itself. A flimsy horror attraction wouldn't be his end, but Fazbear's fright days were numbered. The same shoddy construction that made it a death trap for the guard also made it a tinderbox. The stage was set for catastrophe and for Afton's next reckoning. End of Part 1. As the night guard continued their shifts at Fazbear's Fright, the unsettling discoveries within the attraction began to paint a clearer picture of the horrors that had unfolded decades earlier. Among the relics and memorabilia scattered throughout the building, evidence of the missing children incident began to surface. Old newspaper clippings, security footage, and even cryptic notes left by former employees hinted at the tragedy that had taken place at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The puppet, a key figure in the lore, was revealed to have played a pivotal role in the animatronic possession. Its actions, driven by a desire to protect the spirits of the murdered children, had bound their souls to the animatronics, creating the haunted machines that now terrorized the night guard. This revelation underscored the puppet's tragic legacy, as it had inadvertently perpetuated the cycle of violence by enabling the spirits to seek vengeance. The night guard's investigation into Fazbear's Fright's history led them to uncover the full extent of William Afton's crimes. Through fragmented recordings, journal entries, and the remnants of old animatronic parts, they pieced together the story of the children who had been lured to their deaths by Afton, the co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment and the man behind the infamous Spring Bonnie suit. The spirits of these children, trapped within the animatronics, had been driven by a desperate need for justice, their restless souls haunting the very machines Afton had used to carry out his atrocities. This knowledge deepened the night guard's understanding of the animatronics' behavior, as it became clear that their aggression was not merely mechanical malfunction, but the manifestation of unresolved trauma and anger. As the nights progressed, Springtrap's movements grew increasingly aggressive. William Afton, now fully aware of the night guard's presence, sought to eliminate them, viewing the guard as an obstacle to his escape. His actions were calculated and deliberate, driven by a combination of survival instinct and the lingering malice that had defined his life. Springtrap's deteriorating physical state, with his body fused to the suit, only seemed to fuel his determination. The night guard, armed with limited resources and a faulty security system, found themselves locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse with the vengeful spirit trapped within the animatronic. The tension escalated as Springtrap's appearances became more frequent and unpredictable, leaving the guard with little room for error. Despite the growing danger, the Fazbear's Fright team remained hesitant to take decisive action. The allure of the attraction's success, coupled with their skepticism about the supernatural elements at play, led to a dangerous underestimation of the threat posed by Springtrap. Some team members dismissed the Night Guard's reports as paranoia or hallucinations, while others chose to ignore the signs altogether, prioritizing the attraction's operation over safety. This lack of urgency would prove to be a fatal mistake, as the situation spiraled out of control in the final days of Fazbear's Fright's existence. The catalyst for the attraction's downfall came in the form of a devastating fire. While the exact cause of the blaze remains a subject of debate, it is widely believed to have been the result of faulty wiring, a common issue in the hastily assembled building. Some theories, however, suggest that the fire may have been an act of sabotage, possibly orchestrated by William Afton himself as a means of covering his tracks, or by an unknown party seeking to destroy the evidence of Fazbear's dark history. Regardless of its origins, the fire spread rapidly, engulfing the building in flames and reducing much of its contents to ash. The inferno proved catastrophic for Fazbear's Fright. The animatronics, already in a state of disrepair, were consumed by the flames, their haunted forms reduced to charred remnants. Memorabilia, including posters, costumes, and props, were destroyed, erasing much of the physical evidence of the attraction's existence. The fire also claimed the lives of several employees who had been unable to escape in time, adding another layer of tragedy to the already grim narrative. Amidst the chaos, Springtrap emerged as the sole survivor of the blaze. William Afton's body, still encased within the Spring Bonnie suit, remained intact, a testament to the suit's durability and the resilience of the man who wore it. As the fire raged on, Fazbear's Fright burned to the ground, marking the end of the ill-fated horror attraction. The destruction of the building signaled the conclusion of its brief but tumultuous existence, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. The incident reignited public interest in the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza tragedies, as news outlets and amateur investigators began to revisit the events that had inspired Fazbear's Fright. The fire served as a grim reminder of the unresolved horrors that continued to haunt the franchise, drawing attention to the darker aspects of its history. In the aftermath of the fire, Fazbear Entertainment sought to distance itself from the incident. The company issued a statement denying any responsibility for the blaze and its consequences, emphasizing that Fazbear's Fright had been an independent venture unaffiliated with their operations. This attempt to sever ties with the attraction was met with skepticism, as many questioned the extent of Fazbear Entertainment's involvement and the company's role in perpetuating the cycle of violence that had plagued its history. The public's renewed interest in the franchise's dark past placed Fazbear Entertainment under increased scrutiny, forcing the company to confront the legacy it had long sought to bury. Springtrap's fate, however, remained shrouded in mystery. Following the fire, the animatronic disappeared from the wreckage, leaving no trace of its whereabouts. William Afton's survival raised troubling questions about his resilience and the extent of his influence over the events that had unfolded. Some speculated that he had escaped to continue his reign of terror, while others believed that the fire had finally claimed his life, bringing an end to his malevolent legacy. The uncertainty surrounding his fate only added to the intrigue, fueling theories and speculation among fans of the franchise. The incident at Fazbear's Fright served as a turning point in the timeline of the Five Nights at Freddy's saga. It marked the end of an era defined by the horrors of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the beginning of a new chapter in the franchise's history. The fire's destruction of the attraction symbolized the closure of a dark chapter, yet it also underscored the enduring nature of the tragedies that had shaped the series. The spirits of the murdered children, the puppet's legacy and William Afton's malevolence continued to cast a long shadow over the franchise, ensuring that the horrors of Fazbear's Fright would not be easily forgotten. As the timeline progressed, the events of Fazbear's Fright became a pivotal moment in the overarching narrative of Five Nights at Freddy's. The fire's aftermath set the stage for future developments, as the unresolved mysteries surrounding William Afton's fate and the lingering spirits of the animatronics continued to influence the franchise's trajectory. The incident also served as a reminder of the cyclical nature of the series' horrors, as the past's unresolved traumas continued to shape the present and future of the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. In conclusion, the FNAF 3 era stands as a critical juncture in the franchise's history, encapsulating the themes of tragedy, vengeance, and survival that define the Five Nights at Freddy's saga. The events at Fazbear's Fright, from the discovery of the missing children incident to the devastating fire, highlight the enduring legacy of the franchise's darkest moments. As the timeline moves forward, the repercussions of these events continue to reverberate, shaping the narrative and ensuring that the horrors of Fazbear's Fright remain a central part of the Five Nights at Freddy's story. As the 2020s dawned on the Fazbear legacy, a final act of reckoning was being prepared in the shadows. The year 2023 would see one last pizzeria open its doors, though its true purpose was far more sinister than serving stale pizza to unsuspecting children. This was the era of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, though fans would come to know it simply as FNAF 6, where Henry Emily, the long-absent co-founder of Fazbear Entertainment, would make his dramatic return to stage a carefully constructed finale. Following the disastrous Fazbear's Fright Fire of Tooth Item Squad 3 that was meant to end the nightmare but only scattered it further, Henry emerged from decades of obscurity with a masterstroke of deception. The kindly old engineer, who had once built cheerful animatronics alongside William Afton before the latter's descent into madness, now designed something far more calculated. His new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location appeared legitimate on surface level, with proper business filings, health code compliance, and even a franchise model. But every square inch of the building served a dual purpose in Henry's grand trap. The ventilation systems could be remotely sealed, the false walls contained emergency containment protocols, and the entire structure was lined with flammable insulation material, a detail that would become critically important. Michael Afton, the perpetually suffering son of William, who had survived being scooped and becoming a living skin suit for the Enard entity, found himself drawn into Henry's web. After his harrowing experiences at Sister Location and the subsequent ejection of Enard from his decaying body, Michael had become a man without purpose, existing only to clean up his father's atrocities. Henry's offer gave him direction: become the manager of this new establishment, monitor the animatronics through the security systems, and play his part in the final act. Their correspondence, hidden in the game's source code and later confirmed by the Insanity ending, reveals Michael's willingness to participate despite knowing the likely fatal outcome. The heart of Henry's plan was recorded in a series of hidden audio logs, one of which would later be discovered as the HRY2223 tape. In this chilling monologue, Henry speaks directly to his daughter Charlotte, the first victim whose soul inhabited the puppet animatronic, explaining how he intends to gather all remaining haunted animatronics in one place and release their souls. His words carry the weight of 30 years of grief and guilt. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. This recording, made sometime in early 2023, before the pizzeria opened, shows Henry's understanding that the spirits might prefer closure over moving on. Meanwhile, the shattered remains of previous animatronics were reforming into new threats. Scrap Baby, rebuilt from what remained of the Enard Collective after it abandoned Michael's body, represented Elizabeth Afton's spirit in its most dangerously independent form. No longer part of the hive mind, she developed a distinct personality obsessed with proving her worth to a father figure who would never acknowledge her. Her design incorporated pieces from her original circus baby form mixed with jagged metal plates and exposed wiring, creating a monstrous parody of the once beloved children's entertainer. Security footage from around Hurricane, Utah in early 2023 shows her moving through junkyards and alleyways, gradually making her way toward the new pizzeria as if pulled by some unseen force. Molten Freddy presented an even more disturbing evolution of the Ennard concept, when the various Funtime animatronics that comprised an Ennard, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, and Circus Baby had their falling out that led to Baby's expulsion. What remained was a chaotic amalgam of the others. Over time, the entity rebuilt itself using whatever scrap it could find, with Funtime Freddy's personality emerging as dominant. The resulting monstrosity, dubbed Molten Freddy by fans for its partially melted appearance, retained the core directive of the Fun Times to capture children, but without any of the restraint or organization Ennard had possessed. Its movements in the months leading up to FNAF 6 were tracked through a series of missing persons reports and power outages across Washington County, always moving erratically, but inevitably toward the new Freddy Fazbear location. Henry's most poignant creation during this period was Lefty, a deceptively simple-looking black bear animatronic with a red left eye. Designed specifically to capture and contain the puppet, Lefty incorporated sophisticated audio systems that emitted a frequency matching Charlotte's voice, a lure the spirit couldn't resist. The blueprints show an intricate series of locking mechanisms and soundproof padding inside Lefty's chest cavity, ensuring that once the puppet was inside, it couldn't escape. Henry's journals from this period, partially recovered from an abandoned workshop near Murray, reveal his anguish over using his daughter's spirit as bait, but also his conviction that this was the only way to free her. As spring turned to summer in 2023, the pieces began moving into place. Michael took up his position as manager, operating from a small office where he monitored the building through a series of security cameras and maintenance protocols. The salvaged animatronics started appearing at the location's periphery, first as blurry figures caught on motion sensors, then as distinct heat signatures moving through air vents. Scrap Baby was the first to fully infiltrate, her sophisticated AI allowing her to bypass several layers of security by mimicking maintenance protocols. Her in-game dialogue reveals her twisted mindset. You played right into our hands. Just follow the instructions of the person who you shouldn't have trusted. This suggests she may have been aware of Henry's trap, but saw it as an opportunity rather than a threat. Molten Freddy's arrival was more chaotic, with power surges and system malfunctions occurring throughout the building as it forced its way in. Unlike Scrap Baby's calculated approach, Molten Freddy seemed drawn by the promise of new victims, its fun-time programming overriding any sense of self-preservation. Security logs show it immediately began attempting to access the fake child drawings and recordings Henry had placed as bait, its movements becoming more erratic as it failed to locate actual children. The animatronic's signature giggling, a distorted version of Funtime Freddy's laugh box, could be heard through the ventilation shafts at random intervals, keeping Michael constantly on edge. The most emotionally charged moment came when Lefty successfully captured the puppet. Security footage from that night shows the black bear animatronic standing motionless near the back alley as the puppet's familiar music box melody plays faintly in the distance. Then suddenly, the puppet appears in frame, moving jerkily toward Lefty, as if compelled by forces beyond its control. The two animatronics remain still for nearly 10 minutes before Lefty's chest cavity opens with a hydraulic hiss. What follows is difficult to watch. The puppet doesn't resist as it's drawn inside, its limbs folding unnaturally to fit into the containment chamber. The last image before the footage cuts out shows Lefty's red eye dimming to black, its primary function complete. By late summer 2023, all the pieces were in position. Henry, monitoring progress from an undisclosed location, activated the final protocols that would seal the animatronics inside. The building's security doors engaged their emergency locks, the ventilation system sealed with industrial grade clamps, and the temperature regulation systems were deliberately destabilized to create optimal conditions for what was to come. Phone records show one final call was placed to Michael's office during these preparations, though its content remains unknown. What is clear is that by this point, Michael understood his role in the plan wasn't to survive, but to ensure no one else would have to suffer from his family's legacy ever again. The stage was set for the final confrontation between the living and the dead, between creators and their creations, between sinners and whatever justice this world could provide. As Michael continued his exploration of the pizzeria, he stumbled upon a series of recordings left by Henry Emily, the co-founder of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and a pivotal figure in the Fazbear legacy. These recordings revealed the true purpose of the location, which Henry had designed as a trap to lure and destroy the remaining animatronics, and by extension, the spirits trapped within them. Henry's plan was meticulous and deeply personal as he sought to end the cycle of suffering that had plagued the Fazbear brand for decades. Michael learned that he was an integral part of this plan, tasked with ensuring that the animatronics remained within the building until the final stage could be executed. This revelation added a profound weight to Michael's actions, as he realized that his journey was not just about personal redemption, but also about fulfilling a greater purpose set forth by Henry. As Michael navigated the pizzeria, he encountered Scrap Baby, a twisted and damaged version of Circus Baby, one of the animatronics from Circus Baby's Pizza World. Scrap Baby, though physically deteriorated, retained a chilling presence, her mechanical body held together by salvaged parts, and her voice carrying an eerie mix of familiarity and malice. When she confronted Michael, there was a moment of recognition. Scrap Baby addressed him as her brother, a reference to their shared lineage as children of William Afton. However, any familial connection was overshadowed by her corrupted programming and the malevolent influence of the spirit within her. Elizabeth Afton, the soul inhabiting Scrap Baby, had been twisted by years of isolation and manipulation, leaving her unable to reconcile her past with her current state. Despite recognizing Michael, she remained hostile, viewing him as an obstacle to her own survival and freedom. Meanwhile, Molten Freddy, a grotesque amalgamation of the remnants of the original Funtime animatronics, roamed the pizzeria with chaotic energy. Composed of tangled wires, endoskeleton parts, and the remnants of Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora. Molten Freddy was a physical manifestation of the chaos that had engulfed the Fazbear legacy. Its behavior was erratic and aggressive, attacking Michael on sight and adding to the growing sense of danger within the building. Molten Freddy's presence served as a reminder of the horrors that had been unleashed by William Afton's experiments, as well as the lingering consequences of his actions. The animatronic's relentless pursuit of Michael underscored the urgency of Henry's plan and the need to bring an end to the suffering caused by these creations. In contrast to the chaos caused by Scrap Baby and Molten Freddy, Lefty remained stationary, its purpose far more deliberate. Lefty, a specially designed animatronic, had been created by Henry to capture and contain the puppet, another key figure in the Fazbear lore. The puppet, also known as Charlotte Emily, was one of the first victims of William Afton's crimes and had played a significant role in guiding and protecting the other spirits trapped within the animatronics. By containing the puppet within Lefty, Henry ensured that it would be present for the final stage of his plan, allowing its soul to finally find peace. Lefty's stillness amidst the chaos of the pizzeria was a poignant reminder of the tragic history that had led to this moment, as well as the necessity of the sacrifices being made. As the night progressed, Henry delivered a final speech over the pizzeria's intercom, addressing both Michael and the animatronics. This monologue, often referred to as Henry's farewell speech, was a powerful and emotional moment that encapsulated the themes of the series. Henry spoke of the pain and suffering caused by the Fazbear legacy, acknowledging the role he had played in its creation and expressing his determination to bring it to an end. He addressed Michael directly, referring to him as a brave volunteer who had chosen to stay and see the plan through to its conclusion. Henry's words were filled with a sense of finality and resolution as he declared that the time had come to close the chapter on the Fazbear legacy and free the spirits trapped within the animatronics. With his speech concluded, Henry initiated the controlled burn of the pizzeria, a carefully planned fire intended to destroy the animatronics and the building itself. The flames quickly spread, engulfing the structure and creating an atmosphere of intense heat and smoke. Michael, understanding the gravity of the situation, chose to remain within the pizzeria, accepting his fate as part of the plan. His decision to stay was a culmination of his journey, a final act of redemption that allowed him to fulfill the role Henry had set for him. By remaining in the burning building, Michael ensured that the animatronics would be destroyed and that the souls trapped within them would be freed. As the fire intensified, Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, and Lefty were consumed by the flames, their animatronic forms reduced to ash. The destruction of these animatronics marked the end of their physical presence and the release of the spirits within them. Scrap Baby's demise was particularly poignant, as it represented the final chapter in the tragic story of Elizabeth Afton. Despite her corrupted state, her destruction allowed her soul to be freed from the torment she had endured for so long. Molten Freddy's destruction brought an end to the chaos it had embodied, while Lefty's demise ensured that the puppet's soul could finally find peace. The puppet's release was a significant moment, as it marked the resolution of one of the earliest and most enduring tragedies in the Fazbear lore. Charlotte Emily, the soul within the puppet, had been a guiding force for the other spirits, offering protection and guidance in their quest for justice. Her freedom symbolized the culmination of their collective journey and the end of the suffering caused by William Afton's actions. The puppet's departure from the physical world was a moment of closure, allowing Charlotte to move on from the pain and loss that had defined her existence. William Afton, trapped within the Springtrap suit, was also destroyed in the fire, bringing an end to his reign of terror. Springtrap, the animatronic suit that had become Afton's prison, was consumed by the flames, ensuring that he could no longer continue his cycle of violence and manipulation. Afton's destruction was a pivotal moment in the series, as it marked the end of the primary antagonist and the source of much of the suffering that had plagued the Fazbear legacy. His demise was a fitting conclusion to his story, as he was finally held accountable for his crimes and prevented from causing further harm. As the pizzeria burned to the ground, the Fazbear legacy came to an end, closing the chapter on the tragic events that had defined it. The destruction of the building and the animatronics symbolized the resolution of the conflicts and the release of the spirits trapped within. Henry's plan had succeeded, bringing closure to the stories of the characters and ending the cycle of suffering that had persisted for decades. The fire served as a cleansing force, allowing the characters to move on from their pain and find peace in the afterlife. Michael's decision to remain in the pizzeria and accept his fate was a powerful moment of redemption, as he fulfilled his role in Henry's plan and brought an end to the Fazbear legacy. His journey, marked by loss, guilt, and a desire for redemption, culminated in this final act of sacrifice. By staying in the burning building, Michael ensured that the animatronics would be destroyed and that the souls trapped within them would be freed. His actions were a testament to his strength and determination, as well as his commitment to righting the wrongs of the past. The end of the Fazbear legacy was a bittersweet moment, as it marked the resolution of the series' central conflicts and the release of the characters from their suffering. The destruction of the pizzeria and the animatronics symbolized the end of an era, bringing closure to the stories of the characters and allowing them to find peace. Henry's plan, though tragic in its execution, succeeded in achieving its goal, bringing an end to the cycle of violence and manipulation that had defined the Fazbear legacy. The fire served as a final act of cleansing, allowing the characters to move on from their pain and find resolution in the afterlife. In the aftermath of the fire, the Fazbear legacy was left in ruins, its physical remnants reduced to ash and its stories brought to a close. The characters, freed from their physical forms, were able to move on from their suffering and find peace in the afterlife. The resolution of their stories marked the end of an era, bringing closure to the events that had defined the Fazbear legacy. The fire served as a final act of cleansing, allowing the characters to move on from their pain and find resolution in the afterlife. The end of the Fazbear legacy was a bittersweet moment, as it marked the resolution of the series' central conflicts and the release of the characters from their suffering. The destruction of the pizzeria and the animatronics symbolized the end of an era, bringing closure to the stories of the characters and allowing them to find peace. Henry's plan, though tragic in its execution, succeeded in achieving its goal, bringing an end to the cycle of violence and manipulation that had defined the Fazbear legacy. The fire served as a final act of cleansing, allowing the characters to move on from their pain and find resolution in the afterlife. From the tragic origins of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to the climactic events of the FNAF 6 era, the Five Nights at Freddy's timeline weaves a complex narrative of loss, redemption, and the enduring struggle between good and evil. Through its intricate lore and haunting mysteries, the franchise has crafted a story that continues to captivate and intrigue fans worldwide. And that is the ultimate FNAF Iceberg Explained timeline.